When your boss breaks down crying in front of you at 11 p.m., you know something's terribly wrong. When she admits she's been secretly living in the office for 3 months, you realize her entire life is a lie. Lena Cross, the untouchable creative director who built an empire from nothing, has nowhere to go. And Evan Reed, the widowed single father she employs, is about to make a decision that will change everything. This is a story about power, vulnerability, and what happens when the person who controls your paycheck needs you to save her life. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the office had a particular quality after midnight, harsh, unforgiving, the kind that made everyone look either dead or desperate. Evan Reed had seen both versions of himself in the bathroom mirror over the past 2 years since Claire died. Tonight, though, he wasn't looking at himself. He was looking at Lena Cross, and she was crying. Not the delicate, photogenic kind of crying you see in movies. This was raw, ugly, the kind that comes from a place so deep you forget what it's like to breathe normally. Her mascara had given up hours ago, leaving dark trails down her cheeks. Her hands shook as she pressed them against her face, trying to hold something in that had clearly been breaking through for months. "I'm sorry," she gasped, the words strangled. "God, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't see me like this." Evan stood frozen in the doorway of her office, the cleaning supplies he'd been returning to the supply closet still in his hands. He'd only come back because he forgot his daughter Mila's science project notes in his desk drawer. The office should have been empty. It was always empty by 9, except it wasn't. "Lena," he said carefully, setting down the supplies and taking a hesitant step inside. "What's going on?" She laughed, bitter and broken. "What's going on?" "Everything's fine, Evan. Everything's perfect. I'm living my best life." The sarcasm would have been more effective if her voice hadn't cracked halfway through. He'd worked for Lena Cross for 4 years. In that time, he'd seen her command boardrooms full of men twice her age, fire clients who wasted her time, and build Cross Creative from a 2-person startup into a 50-employee agency that handled accounts for Fortune 500 companies. She was 36, brilliant, and terrifying in the best possible way. People didn't make Lena Cross cry. She made them cry. But here she was, sitting on the floor of her own office at 11:15 on a Wednesday night, falling apart. "Talk to me," Evan said, moving closer. He sat down across from her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Please." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. It was the look of someone who'd been holding a secret so long it had started to poison her from the inside out. "I've been living here," she said flatly, "in the office for 3 months. Evan blinked. "What?" There was a fire. Her voice was mechanical now, like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed too many times. "In May. My apartment building. I lost everything. Insurance is still fighting me on the payout. I couldn't afford first and last month's rent anywhere decent, not with the business expenses, not with—" She stopped, shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Point is, I've been sleeping on the couch in the executive lounge, showering at the gym down the street, keeping everything locked down so nobody would know." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and completely true. "Jesus, Lena." "I know." She wiped at her face with the back of her hand. "I know how it sounds. Successful business owner can't even afford a place to live. It's pathetic." "That's not what I was thinking." "Then what were you thinking?" "I was thinking you've been carrying this alone for 3 months, and that's insane." She laughed again, but this time it was softer, sadder. "I'm good at alone, Evan. I've had a lot of practice." He wanted to ask what she meant by that, but the way she said it, like a door closing, told him not to push. Not yet. "Why didn't you tell someone, Yuds?" he asked instead. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you work for me. Because everyone here works for me. And the second they find out their boss is homeless, the second they realize I'm not the invincible Lena Cross they think I am." She trailed off, but Evan understood. Fear. She was afraid of losing their respect, afraid of losing everything she'd built. "Does anyone else know?" he asked. "No, just you, and that was an accident. She gestured vaguely at the office around them. I usually wait until at least midnight to have my breakdowns. You weren't supposed to be here. Mila's science project, Evan explained. I forgot the notes. At the mention of his daughter, something flickered across Lena's face. Something gentle, almost wistful. She'd met Mila a few times at company events. His daughter had been fascinated by Lena, asking her a million questions about design and creativity and running a business. Lena had answered every single one with genuine interest, never once treating Mila like a child to be humored. How is she? Lena asked. Mila? She's good. Great, actually. Wants to be a marine biologist this week. Last week it was astronaut. Week before that, professional soccer player. Lena smiled, and for a moment she looked almost normal again. She's going to run the world someday. Probably. They sat in silence for a moment, the office settling around them with creaks and hums. Somewhere down the hall, the ancient HVAC system kicked on with a rattle. Evan made a decision. Come home with me, he said. Lena's head snapped up. What? Come stay at my place, just for tonight, or a few days, however long you need. Evan, I can't. Yes, you can. I have a guest room. It's not fancy, but it's clean, and it has a real bed, and you won't have to shower at a gym. He stood up, offering her his hand. Come on, you've been sleeping on a couch for 3 months. Let someone help you. She stared at his outstretched hand like it was a foreign object, something she didn't quite know what to do with. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted, and beneath the exhaustion was something that looked dangerously close to hope. I'm your boss, she said weakly. This is inappropriate. You're a person who needs help. I'm a person who can give it. Nothing inappropriate about that. People will talk if they find out. Then we don't tell them. She searched his face, looking for something. Pity, maybe, or judgment, or some hidden agenda. Evan kept his expression open, honest. He wasn't doing this because he wanted something from her. He was doing it because it was the right thing to do. Because 2 years ago, when Claire died and he was drowning in grief and medical bills, and the impossible task of raising a 7-year-old daughter alone, people had helped him. Neighbors brought casseroles. His mother-in-law took Mila on weekends. His coworkers covered his shifts without complaint. Kindness wasn't transactional. It was human. Finally, slowly, Lena reached up and took his hand. Just a few days, she said. Sure, just a few days. They both knew it was a lie, but neither of them said so. Well, Evan's house was exactly what Lena expected, and nothing like it at the same time. It was small, a 2-bedroom ranch style in a quiet neighborhood where the houses all looked vaguely similar, differentiated only by the color of their shutters and the state of their lawns. Evan's lawn was decent, if a bit overgrown. There were kids' toys scattered in the driveway. A pink bicycle with training wheels, a basketball, some chalk drawings on the pavement that the rain hadn't quite washed away. It looked lived in, loved in. It looked like home. Sorry about the mess, Evan said as he unlocked the front door. I wasn't exactly expecting company. It's fine, Lena said, and meant it. She'd been living in sterile perfection for so long, first in her overpriced apartment with its designer furniture and carefully curated aesthetic, then in the even more sterile office environment, that the sight of real life felt almost jarring. Shoes by the door, a stack of mail on the entry table, the faint smell of whatever Mila had convinced him to make for dinner. Mila's asleep, Evan whispered as they stepped inside. She goes down around 8:30 on school nights, but fair warning, she's an early riser. We're talking 6 a.m., no mercy. Noted. He led her down a short hallway to the guest room. It was small but cozy, with a full-sized bed covered in a blue quilt, a wooden dresser, and a window that looked out onto the backyard. The walls were painted a soft cream color, and there were no personal touches. No photos, no decorations, just clean, neutral space. This was supposed to be my office, Evan explained, setting down the small duffel bag Lena had grabbed from her office. But I never got around to setting it up, so it's just been empty, waiting. Lena ran her hand along the quilt, feeling the stitching. It's perfect. Bathroom's across the hall, towels are in the closet. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen if you get hungry. And, he hesitated, suddenly looking uncertain. If you need anything, my room's at the end of the hall. Don't be afraid to knock. Thank you, Evan, really. I don't know how to— Don't, he interrupted gently. You don't have to thank me. Just get some sleep. Actual sleep. In an actual bed. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. After he left, closing the door softly behind him, Lena sat on the edge of the bed and let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. The mattress was firm but comfortable. The sheets smelled like fresh laundry detergent. Outside, she could hear the distant sound of crickets, the occasional car passing by. Normal sounds, safe sounds. She hadn't felt safe in so long, she'd almost forgotten what it was like. Lena didn't expect to sleep well. She'd spent the last 3 months training her body to function on 4-hour increments, always alert, always ready to wake up if someone came into the office early or the cleaning crew showed up unexpectedly. Sleep had become a luxury she couldn't afford. But the bed was soft. The house was quiet, and for the first time in months, she wasn't alone in a building full of locked doors and emergency exits. She slept for 10 hours straight. When she woke up, sun was streaming through the window, and she could hear voices in the kitchen. Evan's low rumble and a higher, younger voice chattering excitedly about something. Mila. Lena checked her phone. 7:47 a.m. She'd missed 3 calls from her assistant and had 17 emails waiting. The panic started to rise immediately. She should be at the office. She should be working. She should be taking care of herself, just for one morning. She got up, smoothed down her clothes. She'd slept in yesterday's outfit, too exhausted to care, and made her way to the bathroom. Evan had left a stack of fresh towels on the counter along with a new toothbrush still in its package. The small gesture made her throat tight. After a quick shower in a bathroom that smelled like kid-friendly soap and shampoo, Lena felt almost human again. She changed into the spare outfit from her duffel, dark jeans and a simple gray sweater, and emerged to face the day. The kitchen was warm and chaotic in the best way. Mila sat at the table, a bowl of cereal in front of her, describing an elaborate plot for a story she was writing. Evan stood at the counter making coffee, interjecting with occasional questions that made Mila's eyes light up even more. And then the mermaid discovers she's actually half unicorn, which explains why she can do magic underwater, but she doesn't know if she should tell the other mermaids because what if they think she's weird? That's a tough spot, Evan said seriously. Do you think being different makes her weird or special? Mila considered this, taking a thoughtful bite of cereal. Both? I think you're onto something there. It was Mila who noticed Lena first. Her eyes went wide with recognition and delight. Miss Cross, Dad didn't tell me you were here. Because Dad didn't want you barging into the guest room at 6 a.m. to interrogate our guest, Evan said dryly, turning around with 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to Lena, their fingers brushing briefly. Morning. How'd you sleep? Better than I have in months, Lena admitted. Thank you. Are you having breakfast with us? Mila asked hopefully. We have cereal and toast, and Dad can make eggs, but they're always weird because he puts cheese in them. The cheese makes them better, Evan protested, but you can have whatever you want. Are you staying here? Are you Dad's friend? Can we show you the backyard? We have a tree that's really good for climbing. Mila, breathe, Evan said, but he was smiling. Lena felt something unfamiliar and warm spreading through her chest. She'd spent so long being the boss, the authority figure, the person everyone looked to for answers. But here, in this kitchen, she was just a guest. Someone Mila was excited to see. Someone Evan had thought to leave toothbrushes for. I'd love some coffee and toast, Lena said, sitting down at the table across from Mila. And yes, I'm staying here for a little while, if that's okay with you. It's super okay. We never have people stay over. Well, except Grandma Linda, but she doesn't count because she's family. Are you family now? Evan choked on his coffee. Mila, we talked about the personal questions. It's okay, Lena said quickly, shooting Evan a reassuring look before turning back to Mila. I'm your dad's friend and his coworker. We work together. So you're his boss, Mila said matter-of-factly. Dad says you're really smart and kind of scary, but in a good way. Mila! He did. He said you're the kind of person who gets things done and doesn't take crap from anybody. Those were his exact words. Well, he said crap. I'm not supposed to say it, but you already said it, so I think it's okay now. Lena couldn't help it. She laughed, really laughed, The kind that came from somewhere genuine and loosened the knot that had been sitting in her chest for months. "Your dad's not wrong," she said. "I don't take crap from anybody." Mila grinned, triumphant. "I knew it." As Evan set a plate of toast in front of her, buttered with a small bowl of jam on the side, Lena felt the strangeness of the situation settle over her like a blanket. This wasn't her life. This wasn't her kitchen, or her table, or her family. She was an intruder here, a temporary guest who would inevitably wear out her welcome. But Mila was already chattering about her mermaid unicorn story, asking Lena's opinion on whether the character should be able to fly or just swim really fast. And Evan was refilling her coffee mug without being asked, his movements easy and comfortable around his own space. And for just a moment, Lena let herself pretend this was normal, that she belonged here, that she wasn't the woman who'd been sleeping on an office couch for 3 months, hiding her unraveling life from everyone who depended on her. For just a moment, she let herself be human. After Mila left for school, picked up by the neighbor for a carpool arrangement that Evan explained with obvious gratitude, the house fell into a different kind of quiet. Lena sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her, trying to focus on the mountain of work waiting for her. Evan had left for the office an hour earlier, giving her space. He'd offered to call in sick, to stay home with her, but Lena had waved him off. She wasn't an invalid. She didn't need a babysitter. She just needed a place to think that wasn't the same building where she'd been slowly falling apart. But thinking was harder than she expected. The house was so quiet, so normal. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator, every distant sound of a neighbor's dog barking felt like a small miracle. These were the sounds of regular life, the kind she'd lost somewhere along the way. Her phone buzzed. Another email from her assistant, marked urgent. Lena opened it, scanned the contents, felt the familiar spike of stress. The Caldwell pitch. They were supposed to present on Friday. She'd been working on it for weeks, fine-tuning every detail, and now the client wanted to move the meeting up to tomorrow. Thursday. Less than 24 hours from now. She should panic. She should rush into the office immediately. She should... Her phone rang. Evan. "Did you see the email about Caldwell?" he asked without preamble. "Just got it. I'm heading in." "No?" Lena paused. "No? You're not coming in. You're taking the day. I already talked to Sarah and Marcus. We're going to handle the prep work. You can review everything tonight and make final adjustments, but you're not spending your first real day off in months stressing in the office." "Evan, this is a 7-figure account. I can't just..." "Yes, you can. That's what having a team means. We've got this. Trust us." The word trust hit harder than it should have. Lena had spent so long being the only person she could rely on that the concept of trusting others felt foreign, dangerous even. "I don't know if I can do that," she admitted quietly. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Evan spoke again, his voice was gentler. "I know, but maybe start small. Trust us for 1 day. If we screw it up, you can fire all of us tomorrow." Despite everything, she smiled. Tempting offer? "I thought so. Listen, I have to jump on a call, but Mila gets home around 3:30. She usually does homework and then we make dinner together. You're welcome to join, or you can hide in the guest room, or you can go for a walk, or literally whatever you want. The house is yours." "Evan, see you tonight, boss." He hung up before she could argue. Lena stared at her phone for a long moment, then closed her laptop with a decisive click. 1 day. She could trust them for 1 day. ESAT. The afternoon passed in a strange, dreamlike haze. Lena caught up on emails, made a few calls, then found herself wandering through Evan's house with nothing urgent demanding her attention. It felt wrong, this absence of pressure. She'd spent so long running at full speed that standing still felt like failure. But the house invited exploration. Photos lined the hallway. Mila as a baby, Mila losing her first tooth, Mila dressed as a dinosaur for Halloween. And interspersed among them, older photos. A woman with kind eyes and dark hair laughing at the camera. The same woman holding a newborn Mila, looking exhausted and radiant. Evan and the woman on their wedding day, young and impossibly happy. Claire, Mila's mother. Evan's late wife. Lena had known the basics. Everyone at the office did. Evan had taken bereavement leave 2 years ago and come back quieter, more focused, his whole world narrowed down to his daughter and his work. People whispered sympathetically in the break room about how hard it must be, raising a child alone, and then they moved on with their lives because tragedy was easier to acknowledge from a distance. But standing here, looking at these frozen moments of joy, Lena felt the weight of what Evan had lost, what Mila had lost. And yet he'd opened his home to her. A woman he barely knew outside of work. A woman who'd shown up on his doorstep broken and desperate, with nothing to offer in return. The trust that took. The kindness. Lena's throat tightened. She turned away from the photos and headed back to the guest room. Mila burst through the front door at 3:37 p.m. like a small hurricane, backpack flying, shoes kicked off mid-stride. "Miss Cross, you're still here. Dad said you'd be here, but I thought maybe you had to go back to work, but you're here." Lena looked up from her laptop, where she'd been reviewing the Caldwell pitch materials the team had sent over. Everything looked good. Better than good, actually. They'd taken her framework and elevated it, adding touches she wouldn't have thought of. Maybe Evan was right. Maybe she could trust them. "I'm still here," Lena confirmed. "How was school?" "It was okay. We had math, and I got all the problems right, except one, but that's because I forgot to carry the two. And then at lunch, Tommy Martinez said that girls can't be marine biologists. But I told him that's stupid, because Sylvia Earle is a marine biologist, and she's a girl, and she's basically the most famous ocean scientist ever. And he said whatever, but I think he was just mad because I'm smarter than him." Lena bit back a smile. "Sounds like Tommy Martinez needs to do his research." "That's what I said." "Well, I said he needed to shut up, but same thing." "Mila, what did we talk about?" Evan's voice came from the entryway. He'd apparently arrived home right behind his daughter, less dramatically. I know. Use our words, not mean words." Mila rolled her eyes with the practiced exasperation of a 9-year-old who'd heard this lecture before. "But Miss Cross agrees with me, right?" "I think," Lena said carefully, "that you handled it well by correcting his information. The shut-up part maybe could have been skipped." Mila considered this. "Fine. Next time, I'll just give him a list of famous women marine biologists and let the facts speak for themselves." "Perfect plan," Evan said, hanging up his jacket. He met Lena's eyes over Mila's head, and there was something warm in his expression. Grateful, maybe, that she was backing him up without being asked. "Homework time, kiddo. Living room or kitchen table?" "Kitchen table. I need help with vocabulary." As Mila set up her homework station, spreading papers and pencils across the table with the chaotic organization of a child who understood her own system, Evan moved to the kitchen to start dinner prep. Lena closed her laptop, meaning to retreat to the guest room and give them space. "You don't have to leave," Evan said, not looking up from the vegetables he was chopping. "Unless you want to, but you're not in the way." Lena hesitated. She'd spent the whole day alone, and while the quiet had been nice, there was something appealing about the warm chaos of their routine. Something alive. "Can I help?" she asked. Evan looked up, surprised. "You cook?" "I've been known to chop an onion without losing a finger." He grinned and slid a cutting board and a bell pepper across the counter toward her. "Welcome to the team." They worked in comfortable silence, the rhythm punctuated by Mila's occasional questions about what benevolent meant and whether exquisite was spelled with a Q or a K. Evan answered patiently while sautéing chicken. Lena focused on creating perfectly uniform pepper strips, finding the repetitive motion soothing. This, she realized, was what normal felt like. Not the sterile perfection she'd been chasing for years, not the desperate survival mode of the past few months. Just this. Cooking dinner with people who didn't expect anything from her except company. "So how was the Caldwell prep?" Evan asked, tossing the chicken with practiced ease. "Sarah sent you the updated deck?" "She did. It's good. Really good, actually. Better than what I had originally." "Don't sound so surprised. You hired us because we're talented." "I know, Lena paused, searching for the right words. "I'm not used to letting go of control." "Yeah, I picked up on that." Evan's tone was teasing, gentle. "But maybe that's something you could practice, starting small." "Is that what this is? Practice?" Maybe. Or maybe it's just dinner. Mila looked up from her homework. Are you guys talking about work stuff? Because Dad has a rule that we're not supposed to talk about work at dinner. It's family time. You're right, Evan said immediately. Work talk is done. Lena, you're officially off the clock. I don't think I know how to do that, Lena admitted. Then we'll teach you. Mila said it so matter-of-factly, like it was the simplest thing in the world. Right, Dad? Right. And somehow, impossibly, Lena found herself believing them. Dinner was a revelation. They ate at the small kitchen table, the same table where Mila did homework and Lena had worked on her laptop earlier, and the conversation flowed easily. Mila dominated most of it, telling elaborate stories about her classmates and her latest creative project. The mermaid unicorn story had evolved to include a subplot about underwater politics. Evan interjected with questions and gentle guidance, steering Mila away from tangents while encouraging her creativity. And Lena, for the first time in recent memory, just listened, participated when asked, but mostly just was. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. After dinner, Mila insisted on showing Lena her room. It was exactly what Lena expected from a 9-year-old with a big imagination. Posters of ocean creatures on the walls, a bookshelf overflowing with everything from picture books to middle-grade novels, a desk covered in art supplies and half-finished drawings. This is where I write my stories, Mila explained, gesturing to a notebook covered in stickers. Dad says I should save them all, so when I'm famous, people can see where I started. Your dad's smart. I know, he's pretty great. Mila said it casually, but there was a depth to it that made Lena's chest ache. This child, who'd lost her mother so young, had such uncomplicated love for her remaining parent. Can I ask you something? Mila said suddenly, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Sure. Are you okay? You seem sad sometimes, when you think nobody's looking. The observation was so unexpected, so perceptive, that Lena forgot how to breathe for a second. She'd been so careful, so controlled, but apparently not careful enough to fool a 9-year-old. I've been going through some hard things, Lena said carefully, but I'm getting better. Your dad's helping a lot. Mila nodded seriously. He's good at that. When Mom died, he helped me a lot too. He was sad, but he still helped me. That's what you do when you love someone, he said. You help them even when you're sad too. That's very wise. He is. Wise, I mean, even though he makes weird eggs. Mila grinned, the serious moment passing as quickly as it had come. Do you want to see my rock collection? I have 37 rocks and I know where I found all of them. Lena spent the next 20 minutes being shown each rock, hearing the story of its discovery, and genuinely enjoying every second of it. When Evan appeared in the doorway to announce bedtime, Mila groaned dramatically, but didn't argue. Can Miss Cross read me a story? She asked hopefully. If she wants to, Evan said, looking at Lena with a question in his eyes. Did she want to? The old Lena, the boss Lena, would have made an excuse, would have maintained professional distance, but that Lena had been sleeping on an office couch and having panic attacks in empty conference rooms. This Lena, whoever she was becoming, said yes. After Mila was asleep, tucked in with a well-worn copy of The Wild Robot, and a promise from Lena that they could talk more about marine biology tomorrow, Lena found Evan in the living room. He'd put on a documentary about something, she couldn't tell what, and was nursing a beer. Want one? He asked, gesturing to the kitchen. Sure. She grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat down on the opposite end of the couch, leaving a respectful distance between them. The documentary was about deep-sea creatures, which tracked with Mila's current obsession. Thank you, Lena said after a moment, for reading to her. She loved it. She's easy to love, Lena said, and meant it. You're doing an incredible job with her. Evan's expression softened. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together, but she makes it easy. He paused, searching for words. She's the best parts of both of us. Me and Claire. Sometimes I look at her and I see my wife so clearly it hurts. But in a good way, you know, like Claire's still here, in her. She mentioned her earlier when we were talking. Yeah, she does that. She remembers more than I thought she would. She was only 7 when Claire died, but she's got this incredible memory for details. Stories Claire told her, jokes they had. It's bittersweet. They sat in silence for a while, watching bioluminescent jellyfish pulse across the screen. Can I ask you something? Evan said eventually. Sure. The fire. You said it might not have been an accident. What did you mean by that? Lena's grip tightened on her beer bottle. She'd been waiting for this question, dreading it. I have an ex, she said slowly. Marcus, we dated for 3 years. I thought I was going to marry him. Turns out he thought he was going to control me. Evan's expression darkened. He hurt you. It wasn't a question. Not physically or rarely, but emotionally, psychologically, yeah. He was a master at making me doubt myself, making me think I needed him, that I was nothing without him. Lena took a long drink of her beer, needing the courage. When I finally left him, he didn't take it well. There were threats, harassment. I got a restraining order, but she shrugged. Paper doesn't really stop someone who's determined. You think he started the fire? I don't know. The fire marshal ruled it electrical, and maybe it was. Maybe I'm paranoid, but Marcus knew where I lived, and 2 weeks before the fire, he left a voicemail saying I'd regret leaving him, that he'd make sure I had nothing. Jesus, Lena. I didn't tell the police because I have no proof. It could have been a coincidence, but I couldn't stay in that building anymore, and I couldn't afford to start over, and the insurance company is dragging their feet, and everything just... She made a vague gesture that encompassed the entirety of her collapsed life. Fell apart. Evan set down his beer and turned to face her fully. Is he still a threat? I don't know. I haven't heard from him in 6 weeks. The restraining order might actually be working. Or he got bored. Or he's planning something worse. I have no idea. Does anyone at work know about this? No, I kept it completely separate. Professional Lena and personal Lena were 2 different people. Safer that way. Except you're one person, Lena, and carrying all of this alone. Evan shook his head. That's not sustainable. I'm starting to figure that out. He reached out then, slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he covered her hand with his. It was warm, solid, real. You're safe here, he said quietly. I know that probably doesn't mean much coming from a guy you've known for 4 years, but barely know at all. But I mean it. Whatever you need, whatever happens, you're safe here. Lena looked down at their joined hands, at the simple human comfort of the gesture, and felt something crack open inside her chest. Not breaking, opening, like a door she'd kept locked for so long she'd forgotten what was on the other side. Why are you doing this? She whispered. I'm your boss. This is weird and complicated and probably a terrible idea. Why are you helping me? Evan was quiet for a long moment, considering. After Claire died, he said finally, I was a mess. Completely non-functional for months. People had to help me with everything, cooking, cleaning, taking care of Mila, just getting through the day. And I hated it. Hated feeling weak, hated needing people. But they helped anyway, not because I deserved it or because it made sense, but because that's what people do. They show up. He squeezed her hand gently. You've shown up for me, Lena. Maybe you don't realize it, but you have. When I needed flexible hours to deal with Mila's school stuff, you never questioned it. When I was underwater with grief and barely functional at work, you were patient. You saw me as a person, not just an employee. So now I'm showing up for you. That's all this is. It feels like more than that. Maybe it is, but we don't have to figure that out tonight. They sat like that for a while, hands linked, watching alien creatures drift across the TV screen. And for the first time in months, maybe years, Lena let herself imagine what it might be like to not carry everything alone, to trust someone, to be seen, fully seen, and not run away. That night, lying in the guest bed that was starting to feel familiar, Lena's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant, Sarah. Caldwell deck is finalized. You're going to kill this pitch tomorrow. Get some sleep, boss. Lena smiled and typed back a quick thank you. Then she opened her email and, after a moment's hesitation, sent a message to her lawyer asking about strengthening the restraining order against Marcus. Small steps. That's what Evan had said. Trust them for one day. Trust yourself to ask for help. She could do that. As she drifted off to sleep, she heard the house settling around her. Evan moving around in his room down the hall, the heater kicking on. The distant sound of Mila talking in her sleep. The sounds of a home, the sounds of people who cared. Just a few days, she'd said. But lying there in the dark, safe and warm and not alone, Lena started to suspect that was another lie. And maybe, just maybe, she was okay with that. The Caldwell pitch went exactly as well as Sarah had predicted. Lena stood in the conference room Thursday afternoon, watching the clients' faces transform from polite interest to genuine excitement as she walked through the campaign strategy. Every slide landed perfectly. Every question had an answer. By the time she finished, David Caldwell himself was leaning forward in his chair, nodding enthusiastically. "This is exactly what we needed," he said, extending his hand across the table. "Let's make this happen." The team erupted in barely contained celebration the moment the clients left the building. Sarah hugged Marcus. Junior designers high-fived. Even the normally stoic IT guy cracked a smile. And Evan caught Lena's eye from across the room and mouthed, "Told you so." She rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her grin. He was right. The team had executed flawlessly without her hovering over every detail. Maybe she could learn to delegate. Maybe she didn't have to carry everything herself. The celebration moved to a nearby bar, the whole team cramming into a corner booth to toast their success. Lena nursed a single glass of wine, watching her employees laugh and decompress, feeling oddly separate from it all. She was their boss. She'd always maintained that distance, that professional boundary that kept things clean. But Evan slid into the seat beside her, beer in hand, and bumped her shoulder companionably. "You okay?" he asked quietly, voice nearly lost in the noise around them. "Yeah, just thinking." "Dangerous activity." She smiled despite herself. "About boundaries. About what happens when they start to blur." Evan took a long drink, considering. Sometimes boundaries exist for good reasons. Sometimes they're just walls we build because we're scared. Very philosophical for someone 3 beers in. "I'm a man of depth and mystery." He grinned, then sobered slightly. "But seriously, you don't have to have everything figured out tonight. Just enjoy the win." So she did, or tried to. But as the evening wore on and people started filtering out, Lena found herself checking her phone obsessively. No missed calls, no threatening messages. Marcus had been silent for weeks now, but she couldn't shake the feeling that silence was just preparation for something worse. Evan noticed, of course. He noticed everything. "Want to get out of here?" he asked. "Mila's with Linda tonight, so we don't have to rush back." "Linda?" "My mother-in-law, Claire's mom. She takes Mila one night a week so I can have adult time, which usually means doing laundry and falling asleep on the couch by 9. He paused. "But tonight, maybe we could actually do something adult-like. Walk around, talk, not think about work or stress or any of it." Lena should say no, should maintain that professional distance, go back to the house, work on next week's projects. But the thought of being alone with her thoughts felt suffocating. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Let's walk." They ended up at the waterfront, a stretch of renovated industrial buildings turned trendy shops and cafes. It was nearly empty this time of night, just a few couples strolling and joggers doing their evening runs. The air smelled like salt and coffee from a nearby roaster. "I used to come here with Claire," Evan said, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. "Before Mila, we'd spend whole Saturdays here, coffee, browsing bookstores, making up stories about the people we saw." That sounds perfect. It was. We were young and broke and didn't care because we had each other. He smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. "I thought we'd have forever to do simple things like that. You always think you have more time than you do." Lena didn't know what to say to that, so she just walked beside him, their footsteps falling into an easy rhythm. "Can I ask you something personal?" Evan said after a while. "Haven't we crossed that bridge already?" "Fair point. Okay, here it is. What did you want to be before you became terrifying boss Lena?" She laughed, startled. "Terrifying?" "In the best way. Come on, there had to be a before. Before the agency, before Marcus, before everything got complicated." Lena thought back, reaching for memories she'd buried under years of ambition and survival. "I wanted to be an artist, a real one, not commercial. I had this fantasy of living in a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn, painting weird, abstract stuff that maybe 3 people would appreciate. What happened? Life. Student loans. The realization that passion doesn't pay rent. She shrugged. So I pivoted. Went into design, then branding, then started the agency, turned creativity into a product. It's not what I imagined, but it's good, successful. But is it what you want? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Lena wasn't ready to examine. I don't know if I remember what wanting feels like anymore, she admitted quietly. I've been in survival mode so long, everything else feels like a luxury I can't afford. Evan stopped walking, turned to face her. The streetlights cast his face in half shadow, making his expression hard to read. Maybe that's what needs to change, he said. Maybe surviving isn't enough anymore. Before Lena could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped. Don't answer it, Evan said, reading her expression. But she had to know. She accepted the call, said nothing. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice she'd hoped never to hear again. Hey, Lena. Miss me? Marcus. Her hand started shaking. Evan moved closer, concerned, but she held up a finger for silence. The restraining order says you can't contact me, she said, proud that her voice stayed steady. Restraining order's a joke, and we both know it. I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. Heard you landed the Caldwell account. Congratulations. You always were good at getting what you wanted. What do you want, Marcus? What I've always wanted. You. Us. The way things were before you got it in your head that you didn't need me. I'm hanging up now. Wait. His voice sharpened, losing the false friendliness. I know where you're staying, Lena. Saw you moving into some guy's house, playing house with his kid. Real cute. Does he know what you're really like? Does he know how broken you are? The line went dead. Lena stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, mind racing. He knew. He'd been watching her. He knew about Evan, about Mila, about everything. Lena! Evan's voice cut through her panic. What did he say? He knows where I am. He's been watching. She finally looked at Evan, saw her fear reflected in his eyes. I have to leave, tonight. If he knows about you and Mila, I won't put you in danger. Slow down. We'll call the police, report the violation. And then what? They'll file a report and do nothing until he actually hurts someone. I've been through this before, Evan. The system doesn't work until it's too late. So what? You're just going to run? Where will you go? I don't know. A hotel, another city, somewhere he can't find me. Evan grabbed her shoulders, gentle but firm. Listen to me. Running isn't going to solve this. He'll just follow you. We need to deal with this properly. There is no dealing with it properly. Men like Marcus don't stop because you ask nicely. They don't stop because of court orders. They stop when they get bored or they get caught, and I can't wait around to find out which. You're not alone anymore. Evan's voice was intense, urgent. That's what you're not getting. You have people now. Me, Sarah, Marcus at work. Hell, Mila already adopted you. We'll figure this out together, but you can't run. I can't put Mila at risk. If something happened to her because of me, nothing's going to happen to her, or you, or any of us. He paused, then pulled out his own phone. My brother's a cop. Detective, actually. Let me call him. We'll get this documented properly. Get you real protection, not just a piece of paper. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to pack her things and disappear into the night like she'd done so many times before. But Evan was looking at her with such determination, such certainty that this could be fixed, and she found herself nodding. Okay, she whispered. Okay. 20 minutes later, they were sitting in a coffee shop across from Detective Jake Reed, who looked like a slightly older, slightly harder version of Evan. He'd brought a female officer with him, Detective Chen, who took notes while Lena recounted everything, the relationship, the abuse, the fire, the escalating harassment. The restraining order should cover phone calls, Jake said, frowning at his notepad. We can bring him in for violation, but you said you think he started the fire. I have no proof, just a feeling. Feelings don't hold up in court, but they matter. I'll look into the fire investigation, see if there's anything we can reopen. In the meantime, you need to document everything, every call, every sighting, every contact, create a paper trail. I've been doing that for 2 years. Nothing changes. Detective Chen looked up from her notes, her expression sympathetic but frank. You're right that the system moves slowly, but you've got more resources now than you did before. An established business, witnesses, digital evidence. We can build a harassment case that'll stick. How long will that take? Depends. Could be weeks, could be months. Lena closed her eyes. Months of looking over her shoulder, jumping at every phone call, afraid to stay in one place too long. She was so tired. Evan's hand found hers under the table, squeezed once, grounding her. What about protection in the meantime? He asked his brother. Can we get increased patrols in our neighborhood? I'll see what I can do. Also, Lena, consider varying your routine. Don't go to the same places at the same times. If you see him anywhere, call 911 immediately. Don't engage. They talked for another hour, covering safety protocols and legal options. By the time they left, Lena felt simultaneously more secure and more paranoid. Knowledge was power, but it also meant understanding just how vulnerable she was. The drive back to Evan's house was quiet. Lena stared out the window, watching streetlights blur past, thinking about Marcus's voice on the phone, the cold certainty in it. He wasn't going to stop. No matter how many lawyers or cops or restraining orders she threw at him, he wasn't going to stop until he got what he wanted. I can see your brain spiraling, Evan said softly. Talk to me. I'm thinking about how many women end up dead because the system failed them, because they trusted in restraining orders and police reports and doing everything right, and it still wasn't enough. That's not going to happen to you. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that you're not facing this alone anymore. That counts for something. Did it? Lena wanted to believe him, but her entire adult life had taught her that the only person she could rely on was herself. Trusting others had led to Marcus, to abuse, to losing everything she'd built. But then she thought about the past few days, thought about Mila's easy acceptance, Sarah's competent handling of the Caldwell pitch, Evan's steady presence. Maybe she'd been wrong about being alone. Maybe she'd just been too scared to let anyone in. When they got back to the house, Evan made tea without asking if she wanted any. It was chamomile, sweet and calming, and Lena wrapped her hands around the mug, grateful for the warmth. You should try to sleep, Evan said. Tomorrow we'll... I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear his voice. Evan was quiet for a moment, then stood up. Come on. Where are we going? Living room. We're going to watch something mindless and terrible until you're too exhausted to think. It was such a simple offer, such a normal thing, that Lena felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them away and followed him. They ended up watching a reality show about people renovating tiny houses, which was exactly mindless enough to work. Evan provided running commentary about structural integrity and building codes, making Lena laugh despite everything. Somewhere around episode 3, she felt her eyes getting heavy. You can crash here if you want, Evan said, nodding to the couch. I'll grab you a blanket. I should go to the guest room. You should do whatever feels safest. And that was the thing, wasn't it? Right now, alone in a room felt terrifying, but here, with Evan scrolling through his phone beside her and terrible renovation decisions playing on TV, she felt almost okay. Can you stay? She asked quietly. Just until I fall asleep. Yeah, of course. Lena curled up on her end of the couch, pulling the blanket he'd brought around her shoulders. Evan stayed on his end, giving her space, and the last thing she remembered before sleep claimed her was the sound of his voice talking to Mila on the phone, telling their daughter he loved her, that he'd see her tomorrow. Safe sounds, home sounds. She slept without nightmares for the first time in weeks. When Lena woke up, it was to the smell of coffee and the sound of Mila's voice chattering excitedly about something. Morning light streamed through the living room windows. She was still on the couch, blanket tucked carefully around her, and Evan was in the kitchen with his daughter. And then Grandma Linda said we could make cookies, but only if I promised to share them with you and Miss Cross. So I said yes, obviously, because sharing is important, but also I want Miss Cross to taste my cookies because they're really good. I use extra chocolate chips. Very thoughtful of you, Evan said, and Lena could hear the smile in his voice. She sat up slowly, trying to orient herself. Her phone showed 8:47 a.m., Saturday. She'd slept for almost 10 hours. Morning, Evan called out, noticing her movement. Coffee? Please? Mila bounded into the living room, full of energy despite the early hour. Miss Cross, Dad said you had a hard night, so I'm supposed to be quiet, but I'm not very good at quiet. Do you want pancakes? I can make them myself now. Well, Dad helps with the stove part, but I do all the mixing. Pancakes sound perfect, Lena said, her voice still rough with sleep. As Mila dragged her into the kitchen to help with breakfast prep, which mostly involved Lena watching while Mila narrated every step with enthusiasm, Lena felt some of the previous night's fear recede. Not disappear, but become manageable. The morning routine, the normalcy of it, acted like armor against the darkness. After breakfast, Evan suggested a trip to the farmer's market. Fresh air, people around, public space. Plus, Mila wants to pick out pumpkins for carving. Is it safe? Lena asked quietly while Mila was getting her shoes on. Jake said stick to crowded places. Farmer's market fits that bill. And if Marcus shows up in public like that, we call the cops and he violates the order in front of witnesses. So they went. The market was packed with weekend shoppers, vendors calling out prices for apples and handmade soap, a folk band playing in the corner. Mila held Lena's hand as they walked, pointing out interesting vegetables and asking questions about everything. Why are those tomatoes purple? Can you eat purple tomatoes? I bet they taste like grapes. Do you think they taste like grapes? I don't think they taste like grapes, Lena said, charmed despite herself. You should buy some and we can find out. For science. They ended up with a bag full of purple tomatoes, 3 small pumpkins, fresh bread, and local honey. Evan carried most of it, shaking his head when Mila insisted they needed to also get flowers to make the house pretty for Miss Cross. The house is already pretty, he protested. It could be prettier. Miss Cross deserves pretty things. Lena's throat tightened at the simple declaration. This child, who barely knew her, had decided she deserved pretty things. When was the last time anyone had thought that about her? They were loading the car when Lena saw him, Marcus, standing across the street watching them. He didn't approach, didn't call out, just stood there with his arms crossed, a small smile on his face, letting her know he could be anywhere, anytime. Evan, she said quietly, her hand finding Mila's shoulder instinctively, pulling the girl closer. Evan followed her gaze and his entire body went rigid. Get in the car, both of you, now. But Dad, the flowers, now, Mila. Something in his tone made Mila obey without question. Lena climbed into the back seat with her, keeping her body between the girl and the street. Evan pulled out his phone, took a photo of Marcus, then called his brother. Jake, he's here. Farmer's market on 5th, just watching us. A pause. Yeah, I got a photo. No, he's not approaching, but... Okay. Yeah, we're leaving now. Evan got in the car and pulled out of the parking lot, checking his mirrors obsessively. Marcus didn't follow, just stood there watching them leave, that same small smile on his face. Dad, who was that man? Mila asked, her voice small. Nobody you need to worry about, sweetheart. But you're worried, I can tell. Evan met Lena's eyes in the rearview mirror. She saw her own fear reflected there, but also determination, protectiveness. Sometimes adults have complicated problems, he said carefully, but we're handling it. You're safe. We're all safe. Is he why Miss Cross is staying with us? Because she's not safe somewhere else? The question was too perceptive, too close to the truth. Lena didn't know how to answer without scaring the girl more, but Evan did. Miss Cross is staying with us because we're friends, and friends help each other. That's all you need to know right now, okay? Okay? Mila was quiet for a moment, then reached over and took Lena's hand. I'm glad you're staying with us, even if there's complicated adult problems. Lena squeezed her hand, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. When they got home, Evan immediately called Jake back, sent him the photo, filed another report. Lena sat at the kitchen table, watching Mila arrange the flowers they'd bought in a mason jar, trying to pretend everything was normal. These will look good in your room, Mila declared. So when you wake up, you see something pretty. Thank you, Mila. That's very thoughtful. You're welcome. Also, I was thinking maybe we could carve pumpkins tomorrow, if you're not too busy with work or adult problems. I'd love that. Mila beamed and carried the flowers off to the guest room. The moment she was gone, Lena put her head in her hands. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she said quietly. He's escalating, and now Mila's involved, and Mila's fine. She's resilient. She's 9 years old. She shouldn't have to be resilient about stalkers and threats. Evan sat down across from her, his expression serious. You're right, she shouldn't. But hiding from this, running from it, that's not going to protect her either. Marcus wants you isolated and scared. If we let him do that, he wins. And if he hurts her to get to me, do I win then? He's not going to hurt her. You can't know that. No, but I know that Jake's putting together a case. I know that we've got documentation now. I know that every time Marcus shows up, he's digging his own grave legally. It takes time, but it's working. Lena wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. But her entire life had taught her that wanting wasn't enough. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she opened it. Cute family you've got there. Would be a shame if something happened to them. She showed it to Evan wordlessly. His jaw tightened as he read it. Forward that to Jake. That's a direct threat. It'll help the case. And in the meantime, we just wait? Hope he doesn't follow through? No, in the meantime, we take precautions. I'm going to install a security system this week. Cameras, motion sensors, the works. We'll vary our routine like Jake said. And you? He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. You stop blaming yourself for this. Marcus is the problem. Not you. Not your choices. Him. If I hadn't dated him, if he wasn't an abusive stalker, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Don't take on his blame, Lena. That's what he wants. Logically, she knew he was right. Emotionally, she felt like everything she touched turned to poison. The rest of the weekend passed in a strange, suspended state. They carved pumpkins on Sunday, Mila creating an elaborate design of a cat she'd sketched out beforehand. Lena helped Evan with grocery shopping, both of them hyper-aware of their surroundings. No sign of Marcus, but that almost made it worse. Not knowing where he was felt more dangerous than seeing him directly. Monday morning brought a new complication. Lena was in her office reviewing contracts when Sarah knocked on the door, her expression troubled. We need to talk, Sarah said, closing the door behind her. About the business. Lena's stomach sank. What's wrong? Sarah slid a folder across the desk. Financial reports marked with red ink and highlighted sections that all screamed the same thing. They were hemorrhaging money. The Caldwell account is great, but it's not enough to offset our other losses. Reynolds pulled out last month. The Simmons campaign underperformed. And we've got payroll coming up in 2 weeks that I'm not sure we can cover. Lena flipped through the reports, her mind racing. She'd known things were tight, but this was worse than tight. This was potential bankruptcy. How long have you known? She asked quietly. I've been watching the numbers for a while, hoping we'd land something big enough to balance it out. Caldwell helps, but unless we land 2 more accounts that size in the next month… Sarah trailed off, the implication clear. We're going under. Not necessarily, but we need to make some hard choices. Cut staff, reduce overhead, maybe take out a loan. No loans. Lena's voice was sharp. She'd bootstrapped this company from nothing, refusing to be in debt to anyone. The thought of owing banks, of losing control that way, made her skin crawl. Then we need to cut costs somewhere, and that probably means letting people go. Lena looked at the names on the payroll sheet. People she'd hired personally. People with families, mortgages, lives that depended on the salary she provided, including Evan. Give me a week, she said. I'll figure something out. Lena, 1 week. I'm not making decisions like this without exhausting every option first. Sarah nodded reluctantly and left. The moment the door closed, Lena put her head down on the desk and tried not to scream. She'd been so focused on surviving Marcus, on keeping herself safe, that she'd let the business slip. And now everyone who depended on her was going to pay the price. That evening, she worked late at the office, trying to find solutions in spreadsheets and projections. When she finally drove to Evan's house, when had she started thinking of it as a destination rather than a temporary stop? It was past 9. Evan was waiting up for her, concern evident in his expression. You okay? I texted you 3 times. Sorry, work crisis. She dropped her bag on the floor, suddenly exhausted. The company's in trouble, bad trouble. How bad? Potentially out of business bad if we don't turn things around fast. Evan was quiet for a moment, processing. What do you need? A miracle. 3 new major clients. A time machine so I can undo the past 6 months of bad decisions. She laughed bitterly. Take your pick. Or, Evan said carefully, you could let people help. Pool resources, brainstorm solutions. That's what a team is for. I can't ask the people whose jobs are on the line to fix the problem that's putting their jobs on the line. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is keeping them in the dark while you try to solve everything alone. Again. His voice was gentle but firm. This is the same pattern, Lena. You think carrying everything yourself is strength, but it's just another way of isolating yourself. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she had it under control, but she was so tired of lying, to everyone, but mostly to herself. I don't know how to do it differently, she admitted quietly. Then learn. We'll help you. The next morning, Lena called an all-hands meeting. Her team crowded into the main conference room, confusion and concern on their faces. This wasn't standard operating procedure. Lena didn't do surprise meetings. She stood at the front of the room, Sarah beside her, and forced herself to be honest. I'm going to tell you something I should have told you weeks ago, she began. The company is in financial trouble. We're not going under tomorrow, but if we don't land significant new business soon, we're going to have to make some very difficult decisions about staffing and operations. The room erupted in whispered conversations. Lena held up a hand for quiet. I'm telling you this now because I've been trying to handle it alone, and that's not working. So I'm asking for help, ideas, contacts, anything. We built this company together. If we're going to save it, we need to do that together too. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus from design raised his hand. My sister works at Quantum Tech. They're looking for a rebrand. I could make an introduction. I know someone at the mayor's office, offered another voice. They're putting together a tourism campaign. Ideas started flowing. Contacts, leads, creative solutions Lena never would have thought of alone. By the end of the meeting, they had a list of 15 potential clients to pursue and a plan to pitch all of them within 2 weeks. It might not be enough, but it was more than she'd had working alone. Evan caught her eye from across the room and smiled. Told you so, that smile said. She smiled back, feeling something shift in her chest. Maybe he was right. Maybe asking for help wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the only way to actually survive. That night, as they sat around Evan's kitchen table working on pitch strategies while Mila did homework beside them, Lena's phone rang. Detective Jake. We got him, Jake said without preamble. Marcus violated the restraining order 3 times this weekend with documented evidence. Judge issued a warrant. We picked him up an hour ago. Lena's heart stopped. He's in custody? For now. Bail hearing is tomorrow, but with the harassment evidence and the threats, I'm pushing for him to be held. How long? If we're lucky and the case moves fast, could be weeks before trial, could be months, but at minimum, he'll be off the streets for a few days. A few days of safety, a few days of breathing without looking over her shoulder. It wasn't everything, but it was something. When she hung up, Evan was watching her with cautious hope in his eyes. He's in custody, she said, and felt her voice crack on the words. Jake arrested him. Evan stood up, crossed to her, pulled her into a hug without asking permission. And Lena let herself sink into it, let herself be held, let herself feel the relief and fear and exhaustion all at once. It's going to be okay, Evan murmured into her hair. We're going to figure all of this out. And standing there in his kitchen with his daughter humming while doing math homework, and the smell of reheated pizza in the air and the weight of potential bankruptcy and legal battles ahead, Lena almost believed him. Almost. The relief lasted exactly 4 days. 4 days of Lena sleeping through the night without jerking awake at every sound. 4 days of walking to her car without checking over her shoulder. 4 days of almost feeling normal before Jake called with the news that made her stomach drop. Marcus made bail, he said, his voice tight with frustration. Judge set it at $50,000. He posted it this morning. Lena was in the office, halfway through a pitch deck for the Quantum Tech lead Marcus from design had provided. Her hands went numb around the phone. How? I thought you said... I know what I said, but his lawyer argued he's not a flight risk. that the restraining order violations were misunderstandings, and the judge bought it. He's out, but with conditions. No contact, can't come within 500 feet of you, has to wear an ankle monitor. Ankle monitors can be cut off. I know, but legally, this is what we've got. I'm sorry, Lena. She thanked him mechanically and ended the call. Stared at her computer screen where the quantum pitch waited, all those careful words about brand identity and market positioning, and felt the fragile sense of safety she'd built crumble. Sarah appeared in her doorway, took one look at Lena's face, and closed the door behind her. What happened? Marcus is out on bail. Sarah swore softly. What does that mean for you? It means I go back to looking over my shoulder. It means the ankle monitor is supposed to keep him away, but probably won't. It means... Lena trailed off, unable to finish the thought. It means I should leave before he hurts someone I care about. But Sarah was already shaking her head like she could read Lena's mind. No. Whatever you're thinking, no. We're not doing the running thing again. I'm not running. I'm being practical. You're catastrophizing. There's a difference. Sarah sat down across from her, expression fierce. Look, I know I'm just your assistant. You're not just anything. But I've watched you build this company from nothing. I've seen you handle impossible clients and tighter deadlines and budgets that made no sense. You don't quit when things get hard, so don't start now. Lena wanted to explain that this was different, that business problems didn't threaten physical safety, that she'd already put too many people at risk. But Sarah's phone was ringing, and she was standing up, squeezing Lena's shoulder once before heading back to her desk. Quantum pitch meeting is in 2 hours, she called back. Get your game face on, boss. So Lena did what she'd always done. She compartmentalized, put the fear in a box, locked it away, and focused on what she could control. The pitch, the business, saving the company that 50 people depended on for their livelihoods. The quantum tech meeting went well. Not perfect, but well enough that they agreed to a second meeting to discuss budget and timeline. 1 potential client down, 14 to go. Evan was waiting in the parking lot when she came out, leaning against his car with his arms crossed. She'd texted him about Marcus being released, and he'd responded with a simple, I'm picking you up from work. No arguments. I have my own car, she pointed out, which you can pick up tomorrow. Tonight you're not driving alone. Get in. Part of her wanted to argue on principle, but most of her was just tired. Tired of being strong, tired of fighting, tired of pretending she had everything under control. She got in the car. How'd the pitch go? Evan asked as they pulled onto the highway. Good. They want a second meeting. That's great. See? Things are looking up. Marcus is out on bail. I know. Jake called me too. Evan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. We're going to deal with it. How? He violated the restraining order 3 times and got bail anyway. What's to stop him from doing it again? The ankle monitor, the increased charges if he violates again. The fact that Jake and Chen are watching him like hawks. That's not enough. Maybe not, but it's what we have. Evan glanced over at her. You want to know what I did after Claire died for the first 6 months? The subject change was so abrupt it took Lena a moment to process. What? I became obsessed with control. Everything had to be perfect because if I could just control enough variables, maybe nothing else bad would happen. I planned every minute of Mila's day. I researched every possible health risk. I drove myself and everyone around me crazy trying to prevent the next disaster. That sounds exhausting. It was. And my mother-in-law finally sat me down and said something I'll never forget. She said, "You can't control everything, Evan. You can only control how you respond." And then she was right. I was so focused on preventing future pain that I wasn't actually living. Lena was quiet, thinking about the past few months. The past few years, really. How much of her life had she spent trying to control everything, only to have it all fall apart anyway? I don't know how to just respond, she admitted. I only know how to try to stay ahead of the disaster. Then maybe it's time to learn something new. They drove in silence for a while. When they pulled up to the house, Mila was already at the window, waving excitedly. She burst out the front door before they'd even parked. Miss Cross, guess what? I got an A on my marine biology project, and Mrs. Henderson said it was college-level work, and she's going to submit it to the science fair. The pure, uncomplicated joy in Mila's voice was like a lifeline. Lena grabbed onto it, letting it pull her out of the dark spiral her thoughts had been taking. That's incredible, Mila. Can I see it? Obviously. Come on, it's inside. I have charts and everything. The evening dissolved into the comfortable chaos of homework review and dinner preparation. Lena found herself chopping vegetables while Mila narrated the entire science fair submission process, and Evan attempted to help with math homework that was apparently beyond his abilities. I don't remember fractions being this complicated, he muttered, staring at the worksheet like it had personally offended him. That's because you're old, Dad. I'm 34. That's not old. It's older than me. So, old. Mila grinned, clearly enjoying herself. Lena laughed despite everything, and Evan shot her a mock-wounded look. Don't encourage her. She's already impossible. I'm not impossible. I'm advanced. Mila turned to Lena conspiratorially. That's what Mrs. Henderson says. Advanced. After dinner, Mila insisted on showing Lena her marine biology project in detail. It was genuinely impressive, full of carefully researched information about ocean acidification and its impact on coral reefs. The presentation boards were decorated with hand-drawn illustrations that showed real talent. Your mom would be really proud of this, Lena said without thinking, then immediately regretted it when Mila's expression shifted. But the girl didn't look sad exactly, more thoughtful. Dad says that sometimes, Mila said quietly, that Mom would be proud. Do you think people can see us from heaven? Lena had no idea how to answer that. She wasn't religious, didn't have easy platitudes about the afterlife, but this child was looking at her with such earnest hope that she couldn't just shrug it off. I think, she said carefully, that the people who love us leave pieces of themselves behind, in memories, in the things they taught us, in the way they shaped who we are. So maybe your mom can't see you from heaven, but she's still with you in all the ways that matter. Mila considered this seriously. Like how I love marine biology because she used to take me to the aquarium all the time. Exactly like that. And how I know to be kind to new people because she always said everyone's fighting battles we can't see. Lena's throat tightened. Your mom sounds like she was a wonderful person. She was. I miss her a lot. But Dad says missing someone means you loved them, and that's a good thing even when it hurts. Mila paused, then added, I think Dad misses her too, but he doesn't talk about it much because he doesn't want me to be sad. That's very observant. I'm advanced, remember? Mila grinned and the heavy moment passed. Do you want to help me practice my presentation? I have to give it in front of the whole class tomorrow. They spent the next hour rehearsing, with Lena asking questions and helping Mila refine her delivery. Evan watched from the doorway at some point, a soft expression on his face that Lena couldn't quite read. After Mila went to bed, Evan and Lena ended up in the kitchen with tea, a routine that had become familiar over the past few weeks. Lena wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting the heat ground her. Thank you, Evan said quietly, for how you talked to her about Claire. That was really good. I hope I said the right thing. You did. She doesn't talk about her mom much with other people, but she trusts you. The weight of that trust sat heavy in Lena's chest. Evan, about Marcus being out, we're not doing this tonight. Doing what? The thing where you spiral and convince yourself you need to leave to protect us. I can see it in your eyes. You've been thinking about it since I picked you up. Lena opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. He was right. He knows where I am, she said instead. He knows about you and Mila. Every day I stay here is another day I put you both at risk. Every day you stay here is another day we face this together. That's not the same thing as risk. How can you be so calm about this? Evan set down his mug, leaned back in his chair. I'm not calm. I'm terrified, actually, but I'm also clear-headed about what running would accomplish, which is nothing. Marcus doesn't stop being a threat just because you're not here. He just focuses that threat somewhere else. At least it wouldn't be at Mila. No, it would be at you. Alone. Without support or backup or anyone to help you. That's not better, Lena. That's worse. She wanted to argue, but her phone buzzed before she could. Text from an unknown number. Her blood ran cold. Don't open it. Evan said sharply. But she already had. A photo. Taken today, outside the office. Lena walking to what she'd thought was Evan's car. The message below read, "Cute that you think an ankle monitor stops me." Her hand started shaking so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. Evan took it from her gently, looked at the message, then immediately called Jake. "He's violating already." "Yeah, I'm looking at it now." "Okay, sending it over." While Evan dealt with his brother, Lena sat frozen, staring at nothing. Marcus had been there, right there, close enough to photograph her, and she hadn't even known. The ankle monitor was supposed to alert the police if he came within 500 feet, but clearly it hadn't worked, or he'd found a way around it. Or, "Hey," Evan's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "Look at me." She did. "Jake's on it. They're going to his last known location right now. If he cut the monitor, they'll find him. And if he didn't? If he found a way to block the signal or fake his location or any of a dozen other things? Then we deal with it. But right now, tonight, you're safe. We're changing the locks first thing tomorrow, installing the security system I ordered, and Jake's going to have a patrol car swing by every hour. That's not enough. Maybe not. But it's what we can do tonight." He reached across the table, took her hand. "I need you to hear me. Really hear me. You're not alone in this anymore. Marcus wants you to feel isolated and helpless. Don't give him that." Lena looked down at their joined hands, felt the steady warmth of his skin against hers. When had she started relying on this? On him? On the idea that someone else could share the weight? "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Any of this. Let people help. Trust that it'll be okay. Stay when every instinct says run. Then we figure it out together, one day at a time, one moment at a time, if that's all you can manage." She nodded, not trusting her voice. They sat there in the kitchen until Lena's hand stopped shaking, until her breathing evened out, until the panic receded enough that she could think clearly again. And then Evan walked her to the guest room, checked the windows, made sure everything was locked. "Try to sleep," he said from the doorway. "I'll be right down the hall if you need anything." After he left, Lena lay in bed staring at the ceiling, knowing sleep wouldn't come. Her mind replayed the photo over and over, how close Marcus had been, how vulnerable she was. But then she thought about Mila's science project, about Evan's steadiness, about her team rallying to save the company, about all the ways people had shown up for her when she'd spent so long believing she had to handle everything alone. Maybe Evan was right. Maybe running wasn't the answer. Maybe the answer was standing her ground and fighting back. The next 2 weeks blurred into a frenetic pace of work and worry. The team pursued every lead with relentless focus, scheduling pitch meetings and following up on contacts. Lena threw herself into it with an intensity that bordered on obsession, because work was something she could control when everything else felt like chaos. They landed the quantum tech account, then the mayor's tourism campaign, then a regional hospital rebrand that Sarah's cousin had connected them with. Not enough to solve everything, but enough to breathe, enough to see a path forward. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his harassment in ways that skirted legal consequences. Photos sent from burner phones, flowers delivered to the office with notes that were just vague enough to avoid direct threats. A fake job application submitted in Lena's name to a competitor designed to humiliate her. Jake documented everything, building the case brick by brick, but the legal system moved with glacial slowness, and every day that Marcus walked free felt like borrowed time. The security system Evan installed helped. Cameras at every entrance, motion sensors, smart locks. Lena started to recognize the difference between normal house sounds and potential threats, started to sleep in increments longer than 3 hours. And slowly, almost without her noticing, Evan's house stopped feeling temporary. Her clothes migrated from the duffel bag to the dresser drawers. She developed preferences for where she sat at dinner, which mug she used for morning coffee. Mila started including her in plans without asking first, assuming Lena would be there for movie nights and homework help and weekend farmers market trips. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like coming home. One evening in late October, Lena was working at the kitchen table while Evan made dinner and Mila practiced her science fair presentation for the 100th time. The scene was so domestic, so normal, that Lena almost didn't notice when the feeling hit her. happiness. Not the frantic, achievement-based satisfaction of landing a client or finishing a project. Just quiet, steady contentment with exactly where she was and who she was with. The realization terrified her. "You okay?" Evan asked, noticing her sudden stillness. "Yeah, just thinking." "Dangerous activity," he said, echoing his words from weeks ago with a small smile. Mila looked up from her note cards. "Miss Cross, do you think my presentation is too long? Mrs. Henderson said we have to keep it under 5 minutes, but I have so much information and I don't know what to cut." "Let me hear it one more time," Lena said. "We'll time it and see where you can tighten things up." As Mila launched into her presentation about coral bleaching, Evan caught Lena's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." She smiled back and something passed between them that felt dangerous and inevitable all at once. They were falling into something. Had been for weeks, probably. And Lena didn't know whether to lean into it or run before she ruined everything. The decision got made for her 2 days later. Lena was leaving the office late, Sarah walking her to the car per their new safety protocol. They were discussing the final details of the hospital rebrand proposal when Sarah suddenly stopped walking. "Lena, don't react, but Marcus is across the street." Lena's whole body went rigid. She wanted to look, wanted to confirm, but Sarah's hand was on her arm, keeping her moving forward. "We're going to get in your car calmly," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the tension in her grip. "I'm calling the police. Just keep walking." They made it to the car. Lena's hand shook so badly she could barely get the key in the ignition. Sarah was already on the phone with 911, giving their location, describing Marcus's violation. "He's walking toward us," Sarah said quietly, her eyes on the approaching figure. Lena finally looked up and saw him. Marcus, wearing the same small smile from the farmer's market, walking casually across the parking lot like he had every right to be there. Like the restraining order, the ankle monitor, the legal consequences meant nothing. "Get in the car," Lena told Sarah. "Now." "I'm not leaving you." "Get in the car." Sarah obeyed, but kept the phone on speaker so the 911 operator could hear everything. Lena locked the doors just as Marcus reached the driver's side window. He knocked on the glass, almost polite. "Lena, come on, don't be like this. I just want to talk." "You're violating the restraining order," she called through the closed window. "The police are on their way." "The police don't scare me. You know what does scare me? The thought of you throwing away what we had over some misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding. You're abusive and I left. That's the whole story." His smile faded. "You think this new life you've built is real? Playing house with some widower and his kid? You think that's going to last?" "Longer than anything we had." The words were out before she could stop them, and she watched his expression darken into something truly ugly. "You always were ungrateful," he said, his voice dropping to something cold and measured. "I gave you everything, and you replaced me with the first pathetic man who showed you basic kindness. What does that say about you?" "That I learned to recognize the difference between kindness and control." He slammed his hand against the window, making both Lena and Sarah jump. The 911 operator's voice was saying something about police units 2 minutes away. "Stay in the car. Don't engage." "This isn't over," Marcus said through the glass. "You think you're safe? You think that house, that family, means anything? I will take everything from you, everything." Then he was walking away, calm and measured, like he'd just had a pleasant conversation. By the time the police arrived 3 minutes later, he was gone. Jake showed up 10 minutes after the patrol cars, his expression grim as Lena gave her statement for the 3rd time. Sarah corroborated everything, and the security cameras had caught the whole interaction. "That's it," Jake said when they were done. "That's enough for the DA to file for pretrial detention. No judge is going to grant bail after this." "You said that last time," Lena pointed out. "This time we have video, multiple witnesses, and a direct threat. It's different." Lena wanted to believe him, but she'd been let down by the system too many times to trust it now. Sarah drove Lena's car back to Evan's house while Jake followed in his patrol car. When they pulled up, Evan was already outside, Mila hovering in the doorway behind him. He must have called, Lena realized. Jake must have told him what happened. "I'm okay," Lena said before Evan could ask. "Shaken, but okay?" "He came to your office. He threatened you directly." Evan's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. That's not okay. But she is, Sarah interjected. We followed protocol. Police were called immediately. He's going to get arrested again, and this time it'll stick. Evan nodded, but his jaw remained clenched. He thanked Sarah, walked her to her car, then came back to where Lena stood frozen on the sidewalk. Come inside, he said gently. You're safe here. But that was the problem, wasn't it? She didn't feel safe anywhere anymore. And worse, she'd brought this danger to the one place that had started to feel like home. Mila wrapped herself around Lena's waist the moment she stepped inside, hugging tight. Dad said someone was mean to you at work. Are you okay? I'm okay, sweetheart. Just a little scared, but I'm fine. When I get scared, Dad says to think about 3 good things. It helps. Mila looked up at her with such earnest concern that Lena felt her heart crack a little. What are your 3 good things right now? Lena asked. You're here safe. My science project got into the fair, and we have ice cream in the freezer. Mila grinned. That last one might not count as important, but it's still good. Despite everything, Lena laughed. I think ice cream always counts. After Mila went to bed, riding the sugar high from the ice cream Evan had agreed to despite the late hour, Lena and Evan sat on the couch in heavy silence. The TV was on, but neither of them were watching it. I need to leave, Lena said quietly. Evan's head whipped toward her. What? No. He's escalating. Today proved that. And as long as I'm here, you and Mila are targets. We're also targets if you leave. He knows about us now. You think he'll just forget we exist? Maybe not. But at least what? At least you'll be alone and vulnerable somewhere else? That's not a solution, Lena. That's giving up. I'm trying to protect you. By leaving. That's not protection. That's you running because you're scared of caring about people. His voice rose, then he caught himself, lowered it. I'm sorry. That wasn't fair. No, you're right. Lena stood up, started pacing. I am scared. I'm terrified, actually, of Marcus hurting you, of Mila getting caught in the crossfire, of caring about people and having it all blow up in my face again. Evan stood too, caught her hands, stopped her pacing. Then be scared here, with us. Let us be scared with you. I don't know how to do that. You're already doing it. You've been doing it for weeks. You just keep trying to convince yourself it's temporary when everyone else already knows it's not. Lena looked up at him, saw the intensity in his eyes, and felt something inside her shift. He was right. She'd been living here for almost 6 weeks now. Her mail was being forwarded here. Her toothbrush lived in the bathroom. Mila had started calling her by her first name instead of Miss Cross. When had temporary become permanent? I don't want to hurt you, she whispered. Either of you. And I feel like that's inevitable. Maybe. Probably. Even. People hurt each other. That's part of caring about someone. But running doesn't prevent that pain. It just means you're alone when it comes. He was standing so close now, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, close enough that when he reached up to cup her face, she didn't pull away. Let me be clear about something, Evan said softly. This isn't just about giving you a place to stay anymore. It hasn't been for a while. I care about you, deeply. And that's not going to change whether you're living in this house or on the other side of the country. Evan, I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just telling you the truth, so you can make your decisions with all the information. Then he kissed her. It was gentle, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Lena didn't pull away. She kissed him back, pouring weeks of fear and longing and carefully controlled feelings into it. His arms came around her waist, solid and sure, and for just a moment, everything else fell away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lena rested her forehead against his. This is complicated, she said. Everything worth having is complicated. I'm still your boss. Technically, we can figure that out. Marcus is still out there, and we'll deal with him, together. Lena pulled back enough to see his face clearly. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, but it is clear, at least to me. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. The question is, what's clear to you? What was clear? That she'd been half in love with Evan Reed since he'd found her crying in her office and offered her shelter without asking for anything in return. That Mila had worked her way into Lena's heart with her enthusiasm and her big questions and her unconscious wisdom. That this house, this life, these people had become more real to her than anything she'd built in the years before. That she was terrified of losing it all, but more terrified of running away from it. "It's clear that I don't want to leave," she admitted. "That I haven't wanted to leave for weeks. That somewhere along the way, this became home." Evan smiled, and it was like sunrise. "Then stay. Really stay. Not as a temporary guest, not as someone in crisis. Just stay." "What about Marcus? What about the business problems? What about all the very real complications? We handle them. One day at a time, one crisis at a time. Together." That word again. Together. It should have sounded suffocating, but somehow it felt like freedom. Lena kissed him again, softer this time, sweeter. A promise rather than a question. When they finally settled back on the couch, her head on his shoulder and his arm around her waist, Lena felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The moment didn't last long. 2 days later, Jake called with news that the DA had filed for pre-trial detention. Marcus would be picked up within 48 hours and held until trial, which could be months away. It was the best possible outcome. Lena let herself believe, just for a moment, that it might actually be over. That moment ended when she got home from work to find Evan's front door standing open. Lena's first instinct was to run inside to find Evan and Mila, to make sure they were safe. Her second instinct, the one that came from months of training herself to survive, told her to stop. Think. Call the police. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed 911, her eyes never leaving that open door. The security system should have alerted them if someone broke in. The cameras should have caught everything. Unless whoever did this knew how to disable them. Unless Marcus had been planning this all along. 911. What's your emergency? Someone broke into my house, the door's open, and I don't know if anyone's inside. She rattled off the address, her voice surprisingly steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. Are you in a safe location? I'm in my car in the driveway. Stay there. Units are on the way. Do not enter the residence. But Lena couldn't just sit there, couldn't wait while Evan and Mila might be inside, might be hurt, might be... Her phone rang. Evan. She answered before the first ring finished. Where are you? She demanded. Picking up Mila from school. Her teacher wanted to talk about the science fair. Why? What's wrong? The relief was so intense Lena thought she might be sick. The front door's open. I'm waiting for the police. What? We locked it this morning. I checked twice. I know. Just stay where you are. Don't come home until I call you back. Lena? Please, Evan. Just this once. Listen to me. He was quiet for a long moment. Okay. But I'm calling Jake. The police arrived 6 minutes later, which felt like 6 hours. 2 officers approached the house cautiously while Lena stayed in her car, watching, waiting. One officer disappeared inside while the other remained at the door. After what felt like an eternity, the first officer emerged and walked over to Lena's car. She rolled down the window, her heart hammering. House is clear, he said, but you're going to want to see this. Lena followed him inside on unsteady legs. The living room looked normal at first glance. Nothing broken, nothing obviously missing. But then she saw what they'd left on the coffee table. Photos. Dozens of them. Printed and arranged in a careful circle. Photos of Lena sleeping in the guest room. Photos of Mila playing in the backyard. Photos of Evan making dinner in the kitchen. Photos of all 3 of them together at the farmer's market, at dinner, at home. Intimate moments that should have been private, captured by someone watching them for weeks. In the center of the circle, a single note in Marcus's handwriting. You were always mine. You'll always be mine. Lena's knees gave out. The officer caught her arm, guided her to the couch. The same couch where Marcus had photographed her sleeping, where she'd felt safe just this morning. We need to call Detective Reed, the officer was saying into his radio, and get a forensics team here. This is evidence of ongoing stalking. Jake arrived before the forensics team, his expression thunderous. He took one look at the photos and started swearing under his breath. How long has he been watching? Lena asked, her voice hollow. How long have we been living here thinking we were safe while he was just watching? We don't know yet, but we're going to find out. Jake crouched down in front of her, his face serious. Lena, I need you to tell me the truth. Have you noticed anything unusual? Anyone following you? Strange cars in the neighborhood? She tried to think back through the past weeks, but everything blurred together. I don't know. I've been so focused on work, on trying to feel normal, I might have missed. This isn't your fault, isn't it? I brought him into your brother's life, into Mila's life. I should have left when I had the chance. And then he would have done this to you alone. At least this way you've got people watching your back. But that was exactly the problem. Lena had people now, people she cared about, and Marcus knew exactly how to use that against her. Her phone rang. Evan again. Jake won't tell me anything except that the house is clear, he said without preamble. What's going on? Marcus was here. He left photos. Of all of us. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm coming home. Evan, I don't think... I'm coming home. Mila's with Linda. We're 10 minutes away. He hung up before she could argue. The forensics team arrived and began their methodical work, dusting for prints, examining the photos, checking the security system. They found that the cameras had been looped, playing recorded footage from earlier in the day, so it looked like nothing was happening. Professional work. Or at least work from someone who'd researched how to bypass home security. The restraining order said he couldn't come within 500 feet, Lena said to Jake. Where's his ankle monitor? Why didn't it alert anyone? Jake's expression darkened further. We're checking on that now. If he cut it, we'll know within the hour. But Lena already knew the answer. Marcus had cut it, had probably cut it days ago and been planning this whole time, waiting for the perfect moment to make his move. When Evan arrived, he took in the scene with growing horror. The photos spread across the coffee table. The forensics team processing his home like a crime scene. Lena sitting on the couch looking smaller and more broken than he'd ever seen her. He crossed to her immediately, sat down beside her, took her hand. We're okay, he said firmly. All of us. We're okay. For now. But Evan, he was in your house, in your daughter's house. He's been watching her, photographing her. I know. And he's going to pay for it. But what if he comes back? What if next time you and Mila are here and I'm not, and he decides to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Evan's grip on her hand tightened. Then we make sure there isn't a next time. Jake walked over, his phone in his hand and his expression grim. Ankle monitor was cut 3 days ago. He spoofed the signal so we didn't know. We've got a warrant out for his arrest, and every cop in the city is looking for him. 3 days? Lena repeated numbly. He's been free for 3 days and we didn't know. We should have known. The system failed, and I'm sorry. Jake looked at his brother. I've arranged for Linda to keep Mila tonight. You two need to decide what you want to do, but I'd recommend staying somewhere else until we find him. We're not running, Evan said immediately. Lena pulled her hand away. Yes, you are. You and Mila are going to stay with Linda, and I'm going to a hotel. Absolutely not. This isn't a discussion. He's escalating and the next step is violence. I won't have Mila in the line of fire. So your solution is to isolate yourself? Make yourself an easier target? Evan's voice rose. That's exactly what he wants, Lena. What I want is for your daughter to be safe. She is safe. With Linda, with security, with every cop in the city looking for this guy, but you won't be safe alone in some hotel where he can find you. They stared at each other, the argument crackling between them. Finally, Jake cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Evan's right. Hotels are actually easier to access than you'd think, and Marcus clearly has skills we underestimated. He looked at Lena. I can arrange a safe house, secure location, 24-hour police presence. You'd both be protected there. What about Mila? Lena asked. Stays with Linda. Her house is already being monitored. Marcus doesn't know that location. His focus has been entirely on you and on this house. It made sense strategically, but emotionally, Lena wanted to scream. This was her fault, all of it. If she just stayed away from Evan and Mila from the beginning, they wouldn't be in danger now. Okay, she said finally. A safe house. But Just until you catch him. Could be a few days, could be longer, Jake warned. Marcus knows we're looking for him now. He'll go to ground. Then we wait him out. The safe house turned out to be a nondescript apartment in a secured building downtown. The kind of place with a doorman and cameras and keycard access at every entry point. 2 plainclothes officers were stationed in the lobby. Another was in a car outside. It should have felt secure. Instead, it felt like a cage. Evan paced the small living room while Lena stood at the window, looking out at the city lights. They'd been there for 2 hours and had barely spoken, the argument from earlier still hanging between them. "I'm sorry," Lena said finally, not turning around, "for all of this. For bringing this into your life. Stop apologizing for being a victim. I'm not a victim. I made choices. I dated Marcus. I didn't leave sooner. You survived an abusive relationship and got out. Nothing that's happening now is your fault." Evan stopped pacing, moved to stand beside her at the window. "You know what I keep thinking about?" "What?" "That first night. When I found you in your office, and you were so convinced that asking for help made you weak. And here we are, weeks later, and you're still fighting that same battle with yourself. Because look what asking for help got you. Your home violated, your daughter in danger, your life turned upside down. It also got me you." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "And I don't regret that. Not for a second." Lena finally turned to look at him, searching his face for signs of resentment or fear. She found only steady certainty. "How can you not regret this? Your daughter is in hiding because of my ex-boyfriend. My daughter is safe with her grandmother, and we're doing everything possible to catch a dangerous criminal. That's not the same thing as regret." He reached for her hand. "Lena, I need you to understand something. What's happening isn't happening because you asked for help. It's happening because Marcus is an abusive stalker who refuses to accept that you left him. That's on him. Only him. But if I hadn't stayed with you, then you'd be dealing with this alone. And honestly, I don't think you'd survive it. Not because you're not strong enough, but because nobody should have to face something like this alone." Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes. She'd cried more in the past 2 months than she had in the past 2 years, and she hated it. Hated feeling this vulnerable, this exposed. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm so scared that he's going to hurt someone I love to punish me." I know. I'm scared too." Evan pulled her into his arms, and she let herself lean into him. But being scared together is better than being scared alone. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other while the city hummed below them. Eventually, Lena's phone rang. She pulled away to check it. "Sarah." "The team wants to know if we should postpone the hospital pitch tomorrow," Sarah said when Lena answered, "given everything that's happening." Lena had completely forgotten about the pitch. The hospital rebrand, their biggest potential account yet, worth more than Quantum and the tourism campaign combined. "We can't postpone," Lena said. "If we do, they'll give the account to someone else." "Lena, you're in a safe house hiding from your stalker ex. I think they'd understand." "Understanding doesn't pay the bills. We need this account." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Okay, then I'll handle it. Marcus and I can present without you." "You've never pitched alone before. Then it's a good time to start. You've been carrying this company solo for too long anyway. Time for the rest of us to step up." It was exactly what Lena had been trying to teach herself. Delegation, trust, letting go of control. But the thought of not being there for such a crucial pitch made her chest tight. "Sarah, no arguments. You focus on staying safe. We've got this." Sarah paused. "Lena, you built an incredible team. Let us prove it." After she hung up, Lena relayed the conversation to Evan. "That's good, right?" he said. "Your team's stepping up?" "It's terrifying. What if they mess it up? What if the clients think we're unprofessional for not having the lead there? Or what if they crush it, and you realize you don't have to control everything to have things work out?" Lena shot him a look. "You're really committed to this whole learning to let go thing, aren't you?" "Someone has to be, since you keep fighting it." He smiled, but it faded quickly. "Seriously though, your team cares about you. They want to help. Let them." The next morning, Lena woke up on the safe house couch where she'd insisted on sleeping instead of taking the bedroom. Her phone showed missed calls from Jake, a text from Sarah saying the pitch went perfectly, and a message from an unknown number that made her blood run cold. Hiding won't save you, but it will make the game more interesting. She showed it to the officer stationed inside the apartment, who immediately called it in. Within minutes, Jake was there, looking like he hadn't slept. We're tracing it, but he's using burner phones. By the time we track the location, he'll be long gone. Jake scrubbed a hand over his face. I have some news. Marcus's car was found abandoned near the Canadian border. We think he might be trying to flee the country. Or he wants us to think that while he's actually still here, Lena said. That's also possible. Border Patrol's been alerted either way. If he tries to cross, we'll get him. But Lena knew Marcus. He was too smart to get caught at a border crossing, too methodical to make obvious mistakes. This was all part of his plan, whatever that plan was. The day dragged on with excruciating slowness. Evan tried to work remotely, but neither of them could focus. Every sound in the hallway made them jump. Every phone notification sent Lena's heart racing. Around 3 in the afternoon, Linda called. Lena could hear the controlled panic in her voice immediately. Someone tried to pick up Mila from school, Linda said without preamble. A man claiming to be a family friend. The school followed protocol and called me to verify, and obviously I said no, but Evan, he knew where she goes to school. Evan's face went white. Is she okay? She's fine. She never even saw him. The office staff handled everything, but the principal filed a police report and wants to discuss additional security measures. We're coming there. Now. Evan, Jake said you should stay at the safe house. I don't care what Jake said. Someone tried to take my daughter. I'm coming there now. He hung up and was grabbing his jacket before Lena could say anything. The officer tried to protest, citing protocol, but Evan wasn't hearing it. You can come with us or not, but I'm leaving in 60 seconds, he told the officer. They ended up with a police escort to Linda's house, a modest colonial in a neighborhood Lena had never been to before. Linda met them at the door, her face lined with worry. She was in her early 60s with graying hair and Claire's kind eyes. Mila doesn't know, Linda said quietly. I told her the school called about some paperwork confusion. She's upstairs playing. Can I see her? Evan asked. Of course. After Evan went upstairs, Linda turned to Lena with an appraising look. They'd never actually met in person. Lena had always made herself scarce when Linda came to pick up Mila. So, you're Lena, Linda said. I've heard a lot about you. I'm sorry we're meeting like this. I never meant for any of this to affect Mila. From what I understand, none of this is your fault. Linda gestured to the living room. Come sit. We should talk. They settled onto a couch that had clearly seen better days, the kind of comfortable, lived-in furniture that came from years of family life. Photos covered every surface. Claire at various ages, Claire's wedding, Mila as a baby. Evan's in love with you, Linda said bluntly. You know that, right? Lena felt heat rise to her cheeks. We haven't really discussed. He doesn't have to discuss it. I can see it. And I see the way you look at him, too. Linda's expression softened. I'm not saying this to make you uncomfortable. I'm saying it because I need you to understand what's at stake. I do understand. That's why I keep trying to leave, to keep them safe. That's not what I mean. Linda leaned forward, her gaze intense. When Claire died, Evan shut down. For months, he was just going through the motions, taking care of Mila because he had to, but not really living. And then slowly, he started to come back to himself, started to heal. I thought maybe that was as good as it would get, functional, but not happy. She paused, studying Lena's face. But then he mentioned you, the new boss at work who was brilliant and terrifying. And I could hear something in his voice I hadn't heard since before Claire died. Interest, curiosity, eventually something more. You brought him back to life, Lena. You and Mila, you became his reason to not just survive, but actually live again. Lena felt tears threatening again. I don't want to replace Claire. I could never. You're not replacing her. That's not how love works. Claire was his first love, his first wife, Mila's mother. Nothing changes that. But she's gone, and he's still here, and he deserves to be happy again. They both do. What if I can't keep them safe? What if Marcus... What if you stop running from the possibility of happiness because you're afraid it might end badly? Linda's voice was gentle but firm. That's not living either. Before Lena could respond, Evan came back downstairs with Mila in tow. The little girl's face lit up when she saw Lena. "You're here. Grandma said you might not come because of work stuff." "I wouldn't miss seeing you," Lena said, opening her arms. Mila crashed into her with a hug that nearly knocked her over. "Dad says we have to stay with Grandma for a few more days. Is that because of the complicated adult problems?" Lena glanced at Evan, who nodded slightly. They'd agreed to be honest with Mila when possible, just age-appropriately. "Yeah, sweetheart, we're making sure everyone stays safe while the police handle some things." "Is it the man from the farmer's market? The one who made you scared?" "How did you—" "I'm not dumb. I saw how you looked at him, and how Dad got all protective." Mila pulled back, her expression serious. "Is he going to hurt you?" "The police are making sure that doesn't happen." "But is he trying to?" Lena looked at this brave, brilliant child who'd already lost one person she loved and felt her heart break a little. She wanted to lie, to protect Mila from harsh realities, but she also knew kids could sense dishonesty. "He's trying to scare me," Lena said carefully. "But scary and dangerous aren't always the same thing, and I've got a lot of people making sure I stay safe." Mila seemed to consider this. "Okay, but if he does try to hurt you, Dad will stop him. He's really strong." "I know he is." That evening, after Mila went to bed, the adults sat around Linda's kitchen table drinking coffee and discussing next steps. Jake had joined them, his expression grave. "The man who tried to pick up Mila wasn't Marcus," he said. "School cameras got a clear shot. It was someone Marcus hired. We're tracking him down now, but this confirms what we suspected. Marcus is coordinating from a distance." "Which means he could be anywhere," Lena said. "Possibly, but it also means he's using resources, leaving a trail. The guy he hired has a record. We'll make him talk." "How long?" Evan asked. "How long do we live like this?" "I don't know. I'm sorry, but I don't know." The silence that followed was heavy with frustration and fear. "I can't do this to them," Lena said quietly. "I can't keep putting Mila through this. She's 9 years old. She should be worried about science fairs and homework, not whether some psychopath is going to hurt people she cares about." "So what's your solution?" Linda asked. "Run? Disappear? You think that'll make things better?" "It'll make them safer." "Will it?" Linda's gaze was unflinching. "Or will it just mean you're alone and Marcus is still out there, still angry, still dangerous? Maybe now even more motivated because he knows he successfully drove you away from people you love." "At least they won't be targets anymore." "They'll always be targets as long as Marcus sees them as connected to you. Geography doesn't change that." Linda leaned forward. "You want to keep Mila safe? Then help us catch this man. Stop running and start fighting." "I've been fighting for 2 years. It hasn't worked." "Because you were fighting alone. Now you've got backup. Use it." Lena looked around the table at these 3 people who'd inserted themselves into her nightmare without hesitation. Jake, who'd worked the case on his own time and bent rules to keep her safe. Linda, who'd welcomed Lena into her family despite barely knowing her. And Evan, who'd risked everything, his home, his daughter, his peace, to give Lena a place to land. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay. We fight. But we're smart about it. We set a trap." Jake's eyes sharpened with interest. "What kind of trap?" "Marcus wants me. Specifically, he wants me alone and vulnerable, which is why he's been trying to isolate me. So we give him what he wants. Make him think I've left, that I'm alone, that I'm an easy target." "Absolutely not," Evan said immediately. "We're not using you as bait. We use the appearance of me as bait. Undercover officer, wire, full backup team. Marcus comes for who he thinks is me, you grab him." Jake was nodding slowly. "It could work. We've done similar operations before. But Lena's right. It has to be airtight. No mistakes." "There's always the chance he sees through it," Linda pointed out. "Then we're no worse off than we are now. But if it works, this ends. Really ends." They talked through details until late into the night, planning and contingency planning. By the time Lena and Evan returned to the safe house with their police escort, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not hope exactly, but purpose. Agency. the sense that maybe, finally, she could take control of her own story. "You sure about this?" Evan asked as they settled into the safe house living room. "No, but I'm sure that I can't keep running, and I'm sure that I trust Jake to keep whoever plays me safe." "I meant the other part. Staying, fighting, us." "Oh." Lena turned to face him fully, saw the vulnerability in his expression. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of all of it. Of caring about you and Mila. Of the possibility that this could actually work out. Of the possibility that it won't. But Linda's right. Being scared isn't a good enough reason to run anymore." "So you'll stay? After this is over, after Marcus is caught, you'll stay?" "If you still want me to." Evan pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "I'll always want you to." They spent the next 2 days preparing for the operation. An undercover officer who matched Lena's general description was briefed on her habits, her mannerisms, her likely reactions. They chose a neutral location, a coffee shop Lena frequented, and set up surveillance throughout. The plan was simple. The undercover officer would post on Lena's social media about needing to clear her head, about being alone for the first time in weeks. Marcus, who'd been monitoring Lena's accounts obsessively, would see it as an opportunity. "What if he doesn't take the bait?" Lena asked Jake the morning of the operation. "Then we try again, but my instinct says he will. He's getting desperate, making mistakes. The hired guy we picked up rolled on him immediately. Marcus is running out of resources and time, and he knows it." Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that this could actually work, that maybe by tonight Marcus would be in custody and this nightmare would finally end. But she'd learned not to count on happy endings. The operation went live at 2 in the afternoon. Lena watched from a surveillance van 3 blocks away, Evan beside her despite Jake's protests that he should stay at the safe house. On the screens in front of them, they could see the undercover officer, Detective Chen, who'd been part of Lena's case from the beginning, sitting at a corner table with a laptop and coffee. The minutes crawled by. 3 o'clock came and went, then 4. Lena's nerves felt like live wires, every sound making her jump. "He's not coming," she said at 4:47. "Give it time," Jake murmured, his eyes never leaving the screens. At 5:03, a figure appeared on the periphery of one camera. Male, average height, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. He circled the coffee shop once, then twice, clearly checking for threats. "That's him," Lena breathed. "That's Marcus." Jake was already on the radio, coordinating with his team. "All units stand by. Suspect approaching from the east entrance. Do not engage until he makes contact with our officer." Marcus entered the coffee shop. Through the cameras, they watched him scan the space, his gaze landing on Chen. He approached slowly, cautiously. "Now," Jake said into the radio. Officers moved in from 3 directions at once, smooth and coordinated. Marcus saw them coming and bolted for the back exit, but more officers were waiting there. Within seconds, he was on the ground, hands cuffed behind his back, shouting obscenities. It was over. Just like that, after months of terror and stalking and threats, it was over. Lena felt her knees go weak. Evan caught her, held her up, and she realized she was crying. Not sad tears or scared tears, but relief so profound it felt physical. "We got him," Evan said wonderingly. "We actually got him." Jake turned from the screens, his expression triumphant but professional. "He's going away for a long time. Stalking, harassment, attempted kidnapping via proxy, violation of restraining orders. The DA's going to throw the book at him." "Is it really over?" Lena asked, not quite able to believe it. "It's really over." That night, after statements were given and paperwork filed and Marcus was officially booked into county jail with bail denied, Lena and Evan went to Linda's house to get Mila. The little girl was already in her pajamas, reading in bed, but she sat up immediately when they entered. "Did they catch the bad man?" she asked. "They did," Evan confirmed. "He's in jail now. You're safe. We're all safe." Mila thought about this for a moment. "Does that mean Miss Lena can come home now? Like really home, not just staying temporarily?" Lena looked at Evan, who looked back at her with a question in his eyes. This was it. The moment where she had to decide if she meant what she'd said about staying, about fighting, about choosing this life over the safety of solitude. "Would you want that?" Lena asked Mila. Me living with you and your dad? Obviously, you're already family. You should make it official. Out of the mouths of babes, Linda murmured from the doorway, smiling. Later, after Mila fell asleep with her head in Lena's lap and her feet in Evan's, Linda pulled Lena aside. I need to say something, and I need you to really hear me, Linda began. When Claire died, I thought Evan and Mila's happiness died with her. I thought they'd spend the rest of their lives with this hole that nothing could fill. And I was okay with that because that's grief. That's normal. She paused, her eyes bright with unshed tears. But then you came along and proved me wrong. You didn't fill the hole Claire left. Nothing could. But you gave them something new, something different. A reason to keep building instead of just maintaining. And I'm grateful for that. More grateful than I can express. Linda, I'm not finished. I'm also giving you permission, not that you need it, but I'm giving it anyway, to love them fully. To not feel like you're competing with Claire's memory or trying to replace her. You're not. You're just adding to their lives in ways Claire can't anymore. And that's not a betrayal. It's a gift. Lena hugged her then. This woman who'd lost her daughter, but found the grace to welcome someone new into her family's life. Who'd seen past the complications and danger to the possibility of happiness. Thank you, Lena whispered, for everything. When they finally left Linda's house, Mila asleep in the back seat and Evan's hand warm in hers, Lena let herself imagine what came next. Not with fear or reservation, but with genuine hope. The company was stabilizing. Marcus was in jail. She had people who loved her, who she loved back, who weren't going anywhere. Maybe, just maybe, she could actually build a life here. A real one. The kind that wasn't temporary or contingent or built on fear. The kind that was simply, beautifully home. The first morning after Marcus's arrest, Lena woke up in the guest room and couldn't remember where she was. The panic hit immediately. That familiar jolt of adrenaline that had become her constant companion over the past months. Then she heard Mila's laughter from the kitchen, heard Evan's voice saying something about pancakes, and remembered. Safe. She was safe. Marcus was in jail. The nightmare was over. But as Lena lay there staring at the ceiling, she realized something unsettling. She'd spent so long in survival mode that she didn't know how to function without the constant threat. Didn't know who she was when she wasn't running or hiding or planning her next escape route. She got up, splashed water on her face, and found Evan and Mila in the kitchen exactly as she'd imagined. Mila was wearing mismatched socks and mixing batter with intense concentration. Evan was setting the table, and when he saw Lena, his smile was like sunrise. "Morning," he said. "Sleep okay?" Actually, yes. For the first time in forever. She accepted the coffee he handed her, their fingers brushing in a way that still made her heart skip. "What are we making?" "Blueberry pancakes," Mila announced proudly. "With chocolate chips because Miss Cross deserves chocolate chips." "I do?" "Everyone deserves chocolate chips, but especially you because the bad man is gone and you don't have to be scared anymore." The simple declaration, delivered with such certainty by a 9-year-old, made Lena's throat tight. If only it were that simple. If only fear turned off like a switch the moment the threat disappeared. But Mila was looking at her with such hope that Lena smiled and said, "Then I definitely need chocolate chips." Over breakfast, Evan brought up the subject they'd been avoiding. "We need to talk about what happens next," he said carefully. "With work, with us, with everything." Lena set down her fork. "I know. The optics of your boss living in your house aren't great. That's not what I meant. I meant we need to figure out how to make this work long-term. Because I don't want you to leave. Mila doesn't want you to leave. But I also don't want to put you in a position that's professionally awkward." "What if you didn't work for me anymore?" Lena heard herself say. Evan blinked. "Are you firing me?" "No, I'm—" She paused, organizing her thoughts. "The company's stable now. We landed enough accounts to breathe, and Sarah's been talking about wanting more creative control. What if I promoted her to creative director? Made her my partner, essentially, and you could move to a different role, maybe lead the new digital division we've been talking about. Same company, different reporting structure." "You'd really do that?" "I'd really do that. Because you're right. I want this to work. Not just temporarily, not just until the next crisis. Really work. She glanced at Mila, who was pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. All of it. Evan reached across the table, took her hand. Then, let's make it work. The transition at Cross Creative happened faster than Lena expected. Sarah was thrilled about the promotion, and the team responded well to the restructuring. Evan moved into his new role with enthusiasm, and suddenly Lena found herself with actual partners to share the burden instead of employees to manage. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. 2 weeks after Marcus's arrest, Lena met with a therapist for the first time in her life. The idea came from Linda, who gently suggested that processing trauma might be useful before diving headfirst into a new relationship and a blended family situation. Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Detective Chen, though Lena found the coincidence amusing, was in her 50s with warm eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that Lena appreciated. "Tell me why you're here," Dr. Chen said in their first session. "Because I've spent the last few months being stalked by my abusive ex, and now that he's in jail, I don't know how to function without the constant fear," Lena said bluntly. "And because I'm in a relationship with a widower who has a daughter, and I don't want to screw it up by bringing all my baggage into their lives." "That's very self-aware. What does screwing it up look like to you?" Lena thought about it. Running when things get hard, not trusting them. Being so focused on the next disaster that I can't appreciate what's good right now. Those all sound like survival mechanisms that served you well during the relationship with Marcus. But now the situation's changed. So how do I change with it? Dr. Chen smiled. "That's what we're going to figure out together." The therapy sessions became a weekly anchor point, a place where Lena could untangle the complicated mess of emotion she'd been suppressing for years. She talked about Marcus, about the relationship's slow slide from charming to controlling to abusive. She talked about the fire and the fear and the months of sleeping in her office. She talked about Evan and Mila and the terror of letting herself love people who could be taken away. "You talk about love like it's a threat," Dr. Chen observed one session. "Like caring about people is inherently dangerous. Isn't it? Everyone I've ever loved has either hurt me or left. Or died, in Claire's case. But Evan didn't leave by choice. And Mila's not going anywhere. The only person you're describing who actively chose to hurt you is Marcus. One seems like enough. One is too many, but it's not everyone. And treating Evan and Mila like they're potential threats isn't protecting you. It's just preventing connection." The work was hard. Some days Lena left therapy feeling raw and exposed. But slowly, incrementally, she started to notice changes. She slept better. The hypervigilance eased. She caught herself smiling at random moments while making dinner with Evan, while helping Mila with homework, while sitting in meetings at work where her team handled problems without her having to micromanage. 1 month after Marcus's arrest, the DA's office called with an update. Marcus had been formally charged with stalking, harassment, attempted kidnapping by proxy, multiple violations of restraining orders, and breaking and entering. His bail had been denied. The trial was set for 6 months out, but the evidence was overwhelming. "He's going to prison," the assistant DA told Lena over the phone. "The question is just how long. We're pushing for the maximum sentence." "How long is that?" 15 to 20 years, given the severity and the multiple charges. 15 to 20 years. Lena tried to imagine that much time stretching out in front of her, time she could live without looking over her shoulder. It felt impossible. "What if he gets parole?" she asked. "With this kind of record?" "Unlikely. But even if he does, it won't be for years, and you'll have protection orders in place indefinitely." After the call, Lena sat in her car in the office parking lot, her own car, which she'd reclaimed from the impound after the investigation, and cried. Not sad tears or scared tears, but the kind of crying that felt like release, like letting go of tension she'd been holding so long it had become part of her body. When she finally pulled herself together and went inside, Sarah took one look at her face and ushered her into her office. "Talk to me," Sarah said, closing the door. So Lena told her about the call, about the potential sentence, about the strange mix of relief and disbelief she felt. "You know what this means?" Sarah said when Lena finished. "It means you get your life back, really back, not just surviving, but actually living." "I don't know if I remember how to do that." "Then you learn. Again. That's what you do best, isn't it? Figure things out." That night at dinner, which had become their routine, the three of them around Evan's kitchen table, Lena shared the news about Marcus's charges. Mila, who'd been kept appropriately informed throughout the process, nodded seriously. "Good," she said. "He should go to jail for being mean to you and for scaring us." "I'm sorry you got scared, sweetheart," Lena said. "It's okay. Dad says sometimes scary things happen, but we get through them together." And we did. We got through it. Mila paused, then added with 9-year-old logic. "Plus, now you're staying forever, so it kind of worked out." Evan choked on his water. "Mila, we haven't exactly— You're going to ask her to marry you eventually, right? I'm not dumb. I see how you look at each other." Lena felt heat flood her face. They'd been dancing around the topic of their relationship for weeks, defining it through actions rather than words. But marriage? That felt like a huge leap from where they were. "Mila," Evan said, his voice strained, "that's a conversation for grown-ups to have in private. I'm just saying, if you wait too long, she might think you don't want to, and then she might leave. That's what happened on the show Grandma Linda watches. I'm not basing my relationship decisions on whatever soap opera your grandmother watches. It's not a soap opera, it's a drama. There's a difference." Lena couldn't help it. She laughed, really laughed, the kind that came from somewhere deep and genuine. Mila looked pleased with herself. Evan looked mortified. Later, after Mila was in bed, Evan found Lena in the living room where she'd been sorting through insurance paperwork from the fire. The settlement had finally come through, enough to rebuild what she'd lost and then some. "I'm sorry about dinner," Evan said, sitting beside her. Mila sometimes says exactly what she's thinking without considering timing or appropriateness. "I wonder where she gets that from," Lena teased, thinking about all the times Evan had been bluntly honest with her. "Fair point." He was quiet for a moment. "But she's not wrong. About how I feel. About what I want eventually." Lena set down the paperwork, gave him her full attention. "Yeah? Yeah. I know it's fast. I know we've only been officially together for a few weeks, but I've known you for years and I've been falling for you for months before that even became a possibility. So yeah, eventually, when the time is right, I want to marry you. If you want that too." "Eventually?" Lena repeated, testing the word. "Not now. Not now. You just got your life back. You're still processing trauma. We're still figuring out how to blend our lives together. There's no rush." He took her hand. "But I wanted you to know where my head's at, so you're not wondering." "I appreciate that. And for the record, eventually sounds good to me too. Scary, but good." "Most good things are scary." They kissed, slow and sweet, and Lena marveled at how far she'd come. From the woman crying in her office with nowhere to go, to this, to a home and a family and a future that felt real. The next several months passed in a blur of routine and healing. Lena continued therapy, working through layers of trauma she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. The business thrived under the new structure, with Sarah's creative vision complementing Lena's strategic thinking, and Evan's digital expertise opening new revenue streams. Mila's science fair project won second place at regionals, which she declared was basically first place because the first place project was about renewable energy, and everyone knows judges love renewable energy. She started talking about marine biology less and engineering more, her interest shifting with the characteristic enthusiasm of childhood. Linda became a regular presence in their lives, joining them for Sunday dinners and providing occasional childcare when needed. She and Lena developed their own relationship, one built on mutual respect and their shared love for Evan and Mila. Marcus's trial date came and went with a plea deal, 15 years in prison with no possibility of parole for at least 10. His lawyer had advised him that going to trial would likely result in an even longer sentence. Lena attended the sentencing hearing, Evan and Jake on either side of her, and watched Marcus be led away in handcuffs. He looked smaller than she remembered, less threatening, just a man who'd hurt people and was finally facing consequences. When it was over, when the judge's gavel came down and Marcus was officially sentenced, Lena felt something shift in her chest. Not closure exactly. She'd learned in therapy that closure was overrated, but acknowledgement. The chapter was ending. A new one could begin. 6 months after Marcus's arrest, on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday in April, Lena moved the last of her things out of the guest room and into Evan's bedroom. It was a small thing, symbolically huge, and Mila treated it like a major life event. "This means you're really staying," she said, watching Lena hang clothes in the closet that was now half hers. "I've been really staying for months now, sweetheart." "I know, but now it's official. The guest room is for guests. You're not a guest. You're family." Family. The word still felt new, fragile, like something Lena might break if she held it too tightly. But it also felt right. That summer, Cross Creative landed their biggest client yet, a national campaign for a major retail chain. The kind of account that changed a company's trajectory, that opened doors to even bigger opportunities. They celebrated with the whole team, and Lena found herself giving a toast about collaboration and trust and how they'd built something remarkable together. 2 years ago, I thought I had to do everything alone to be successful, she told her assembled employees. I thought asking for help was weakness, that trusting others was risky. And then life taught me, pretty aggressively, honestly, that I was wrong. This company isn't successful because of me. It's successful because of all of us. Because we show up for each other. Because we trust each other. So thank you for showing up, for trusting, for building this with me. The applause was genuine, warm, and as Lena looked around at the faces of people she'd hired and worked with and grown to trust, she felt pride. Not the brittle, anxious pride of someone trying to prove something, but the solid satisfaction of knowing she'd built something real. In August, Evan took Lena and Mila camping for a long weekend. They hiked and fished and sat around campfires telling stories. On the last night, after Mila had gone to sleep in the tent, Evan and Lena sat by the dying fire looking at stars. "Can I ask you something?" Evan said. "Always." "Are you happy?" "Really happy, not just okay or managing or getting through it?" Lena thought about it, wanting to give an honest answer. "I'm happy," she said finally. "Not every minute of every day. Sometimes I still get scared. Sometimes I still have nightmares about Marcus. Sometimes I panic about the business or about whether I'm doing right by Mila. But underneath all that, yeah, I'm happy." "Good, because I have something to ask you, and I want to make sure the timing's right." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, and Lena's heart started racing. "I know we said eventually," Evan continued, opening the box to reveal a simple silver ring with a small diamond. "And I know it's only been 9 months since Marcus was arrested, less than a year since you first stayed with us. But Lena, I've known for months now that I want to spend my life with you. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Not next month or even next year, but eventually. Whenever you're ready. I just want you to know that I'm all in." Lena looked at the ring, at Evan's hopeful face, at the tent where Mila slept dreaming of whatever 9-year-olds dream about. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear and the loss and the slow, painful work of learning to trust again. "Yes," she said, and the word felt like freedom. "Yes, eventually sounds perfect." He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed under stars that had witnessed countless other moments of joy and heartbreak and human connection. When they finally pulled apart, Lena was crying again, but this time it was pure happiness. They told Mila the next morning over camp pancakes. She shrieked so loudly she scared a family of deer, then launched into an elaborate monologue about wedding plans that involved marine biology themes and at least 17 different kinds of cake. "We're not getting married tomorrow," Evan reminded her. "Lena and I need time to plan, to figure things out. Can I be the flower girl? No, wait, I'm too old for that. Can I be the maid of honor? Do you have a maid of honor if you're old?" "No offense, Miss Lena." "None taken, and yes, you can absolutely be in the wedding party." "Can we have it at the beach? I bet we could incorporate real marine biology if we did it at the beach. We could release sea turtles or something." "We're not releasing sea turtles at my wedding," Lena said firmly, but she was smiling. The planning took months, partly because they were in no rush, and partly because coordinating 3 different schedules, 4, if you counted Linda's input, proved complicated. They settled on a small ceremony the following spring, just close friends and family, nothing elaborate. During that time, Lena continued therapy, working through her fears about commitment and marriage. Dr. Chen helped her understand that being afraid didn't mean she was making a mistake. It just meant she cared enough to worry about getting it right. You've spent your whole adult life protecting yourself, Dr. Chen said in one session, from Marcus, from vulnerability, from the possibility of being hurt. But protection and isolation aren't the same thing. You can be safe and still be open. You can be careful and still be trusting. How do I know the difference? You practice. You pay attention to what feels like healthy caution versus what feels like fear running the show, and you trust yourself to know which is which. 3 months before the wedding, Lena received a letter from Marcus in prison. Her first instinct was to throw it away unopened, but her therapist suggested reading it might provide closure. The letter was short, manipulative in ways Lena now recognized clearly. Marcus claimed he'd changed, that he understood what he'd done wrong, that he hoped someday she could forgive him. It was a masterclass in emotional manipulation disguised as accountability. Lena read it once, felt the old familiar fear trying to resurface, then deliberately chose not to let it. Marcus was in prison. His words couldn't hurt her anymore unless she gave them power. She wrote back a single sentence. I don't forgive you, but I'm no longer defined by what you did to me. I'm free, and you're not. Then she threw the letter away and didn't think about it again. The wedding took place on a perfect April morning at a small venue overlooking the ocean. Mila wore a dress she'd picked out herself, marine blue with what she insisted were scientifically accurate embroidered fish. Linda cried through the entire ceremony. Sarah served as maid of honor, crying almost as much as Linda. When Lena walked down the aisle, escorted by Sarah because she had no family of her own, and Sarah had become the closest thing, she saw Evan waiting for her with tears in his eyes. Mila stood beside him in her fish dress, grinning so wide it looked like her face might split. This was her family now. This imperfect, beautiful, chosen family. The ceremony itself was short, personal vows that made everyone cry. Evan promised to show up for Lena every day, even the hard days, especially the hard days. Lena promised to stay, to trust, to build a life instead of just surviving one. They both promised to love Mila and each other with honesty and patience and grace. When the officiant pronounced them married and Evan kissed her, Lena felt something she'd never quite believed in before. Complete, unguarded joy. The reception was small and intimate, held at Linda's house with catering from Mila's favorite restaurant. There was dancing and laughter and toasts that were equal parts heartfelt and ridiculous. Mila gave a speech about how she'd known from the beginning that Lena was supposed to be her mom, which made Lena sob into her cake. I already had one mom who I loved, Mila said, with the wisdom of someone far older than 10. And she'll always be my mom. But that doesn't mean there's not room for another person to love me that way too. Family isn't about replacing people. It's about adding them. Later, when the party wound down and guests started leaving, Lena found herself on Linda's back porch with her new mother-in-law. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the neighborhood where Claire had grown up. She would have liked you, Linda said quietly. Claire. She would have appreciated how you loved them. How you fought to stay when leaving would have been easier. I hope so. I never want to feel like I'm trying to replace her. You're not. You're just loving the people she left behind. There's no replacement in that. Just continuation. Linda squeezed Lena's hand. Thank you for choosing us, for letting us choose you back. That night, in the hotel room they'd booked for their wedding night, Mila was having a sleepover with Linda, already planning what she called honeymoon activities for them. Evan and Lena lay tangled together, exhausted and happy. We did it, Evan said, his voice full of wonder. We're married. We're married, Lena repeated, testing out the reality. I have a husband and a daughter and a family. How does it feel? Terrifying. Amazing. Right. She turned to face him. Thank you. For what? For finding me that night in my office. For offering me shelter. For not letting me run. For loving me even when I was too scared to love you back. Thank you for staying. For trusting me. For being brave enough to try. They kissed, slow and sweet, and Lena thought about the journey that had brought them here. All the fear and pain and growth, all the moments she'd wanted to run but chose to stay instead. She thought about the woman she'd been a year and a half ago, sleeping on an office couch and convinced she had to handle everything alone. That woman wouldn't recognize this life, wouldn't believe it was possible, But that woman had been stronger than she knew, strong enough to accept help, strong enough to trust, strong enough to heal. The months after the wedding settled into a comfortable rhythm. Lena officially adopted Mila, a legal process that felt both bureaucratic and deeply meaningful. Mila started calling her Mom Lena to distinguish her from Mom Claire, which Lena treasured. The business continued to thrive. Lena, Sarah, and Evan formed a partnership that played to all their strengths, and Cross Creative became known not just for quality work, but for being a company that valued people over profits. Lena continued therapy, though less frequently now. She'd learned to recognize her triggers, to communicate her needs, to trust herself and others. The nightmares came less often. The hypervigilance eased into normal caution. She wasn't perfect. She still had days where the fear crept back in, where she wanted to control everything, where she forgot she didn't have to carry the weight alone. But now she had people who reminded her, gently and with love, that she'd chosen differently. 2 years after the wedding, on a lazy Sunday morning, Lena woke up to find Evan already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked, self-conscious. "Just thinking about how far we've come. How different things are from that first night, when you found me crying in my office and offered me your guest room. When you were brave enough to accept help from a relative stranger." Lena smiled, reaching for his hand. "Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Evan corrected. "The best was saying yes when I proposed." "Actually, I think the best was deciding to stay. Everything else followed from that." From down the hall, they heard Mila stirring, heard her door open and her feet padding toward their room. She appeared in the doorway, hair a mess, wearing pajamas covered in sharks. "Can we make waffles?" she asked. "And then go to the aquarium? I want to see the new octopus exhibit." "It's Sunday," Evan protested. "We could sleep in." "But the octopus exhibit is only here for another month. And octopuses are super intelligent. Did you know they can solve puzzles and use tools?" "I did know that, actually. You've told me approximately 47 times." "Then you should remember how important this is." Mila climbed onto the bed, wedging herself between them with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved. "Please, we could make it a family day?" Lena and Evan exchanged a look over her head, one of those wordless conversations that couples develop over time. "Waffles and octopuses it is," Lena said, pulling Mila into a hug. "But you're helping make the waffles." "Obviously, I'm the best waffle maker in this family." "What about your humility?" Evan asked. "I'm also the most humble. It's one of my best qualities." They laughed, the three of them tangled together in the morning light, and Lena felt it again, that sense of complete, unguarded joy. This was her life now, not perfect, not without challenges, but real and solid and chosen. She'd come so far from the woman who'd been sleeping on an office couch, convinced she had to face everything alone. That woman had been surviving. This woman, wife, mother, partner, friend, was living. And living, Lena had learned, was so much better than just surviving. Later that day, standing in front of the octopus exhibit with Evan's arm around her waist and Mila explaining the creature's remarkable intelligence to anyone who would listen, Lena sent up a silent thank you to the universe that had brought her here. "Thank you for the fire that destroyed my apartment and forced me to ask for help. Thank you for Evan finding me that night and seeing past the tears to the person underneath. Thank you for Mila's open heart and her belief that families can be built, not just born. Thank you for Linda's grace and Sarah's friendship and Jake's dedication. Thank you for teaching me that strength isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about knowing when to let others carry it with you. Thank you for this messy, beautiful, imperfect life." As if reading her thoughts, Evan squeezed her waist and whispered, "You okay?" "Yeah," Lena said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. "I'm better than okay. I'm home." And she was. Not in the physical sense of a building with walls and a roof, though she loved the house they shared, but in the deeper sense of belonging, of being known and loved, of having people who showed up even when it was hard. Home wasn't a place you escaped to when things fell apart. It was the people who stayed when leaving would be easier. It was the life you built together, one small choice at a time, one act of courage at a time. Lena had spent so long running that she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand still and let herself be found. But now she knew, and she was never going back to running again. The story that had started with a breakdown in an office late at night had become something neither Lena nor Evan could have predicted that first evening. It had become a family, a partnership, a future worth building. And as they left the aquarium that afternoon, Mila chattering about cephalopod intelligence while Evan made terrible octopus puns and Lena laughed at both of them, she realized something profound. The woman who'd lost everything in a fire had gained something irreplaceable. Not things or security or control, but connection, trust, love. She'd gained a home that couldn't burn down because it wasn't built from wood and walls. It was built for moments like these, ordinary, beautiful, perfectly imperfect moments of being together. And that kind of home? That lasted forever.